Chapter 33:48. The Palace Lord's sinister voice sounded as he laughed softly. His laughter was ethereal, making one's scalp go numb. "I didn't say I'd help you." With a flick of his palm, Hao Nanren's fat body flew backward and landed heavily on the ground. This graveyard was a little scary. The ground was filled with broken limbs and countless bones. Hao Nanren's fall had broken bones all around. The sharp bones pierced directly into Hao Nanren's body. It was so painful that Hao Nanren's features twisted as he screamed miserably. If it wasn't for the fact that under such a situation, if you died, it would be very difficult. I really don't want to keep you alive. The Palace Lord's tone was filled with impatience. Finishing his words, he placed his vision on Yi Qing Luo. "Miss Yi, I'll give you one last chance. Are you going to guess or not?" That tone seemed as though he was teasing his prey. It made Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased into a bundle. The Palace Lord's motive. Even if she knew, she didn't want to answer. Dmo Xian's thoughts were the same as hers. The moment the Palace Master of Secluded Darkness Palace finished speaking, Dmo Xian had already held onto the young lady's waist tightly as he leapt up. His purple robe fluttered as the patterns on it seemed to be sparkling brightly. The icy cold profound ray was sharp and valiant as it headed straight towards the Palace Lord's face. His eyes were sealed in ice for thousands of miles. His entire body was emitting a strong flame which contained a shocking murderous intent. "Ah Xian!" Yi Qing Luo hugged Dmo Xian's waist tightly as she was stunned by the flame emitted from him. This Dmo Xian! As compared to the past times, it made one's heart tremble. This was the first time she saw it. Dmo Xian's arm hugged her tightly as his deep voice was still as gentle as usual. "It's all right, close your eyes and it will end very soon." Only, this gentleness made Yi Qing Luo's heart suddenly felt a tightness. She pursed her lips as she grabbed Dmo Xian's arm tightly. "Wait a minute, Ah Xian. You want to kill him?" Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as his deep peach blossom eyes stared deeply at her face. "You don't wish for me to kill him?" That tone seemed to be a little grumbling. Yi Qing Luo. Surely he wasn't jealous again? "It's not that I don't want you to kill him, it's just that I find it a little strange." Yi Qing Luo shook her head, knitted her brows and hesitated. The Palace Lord of the Secluded Darkness Palace used a trap within a trap to lure us here, so it's impossible that he didn't take any precautions. "I know Ah Xian, you're very strong, but the other party is also from the upper realm. I'm worried that he might have some conspiracy against you." Behind him, the sneer of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace could be heard. Apparently, he had heard Yi Qing Luo's words. "Miss Yi is indeed smart. Indeed, I couldn't have lured you all here so simply," Yi Qingtang said. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace's voice was cold and sinister. Even though he was covered in a black cloak, Yi Qing Luo could feel that under that cloak, there was an eerie and sinister aura. Unfortunately, I discovered it too late. The Palace Lord of Netherworld Palace sneered in disdain as his cold eyes looked at Dmo Xian, who had stopped his attack because of the young lady's obstruction. So what if they found out? Ever since Dmo Xian made his move, Dmo Xian had already fallen into his trap. The Palace Lord of the Netherworld Palace's words made Yi Qing Luo's expression congealed as her heart thumped. What did he mean by this? The next moment, the Palace Lord of the Netherworld Palace gave her the answer. She saw the Palace Lord of the Netherworld Palace giving a cold laugh as he waved his black robe, following the movement of a burst of black qi. Ka! Chapter 33:49. This voice made Yi Qing Luo stun slightly. She swiftly turned her head around and looked behind her. She saw the black qi curling up in the tomb behind her. Unknowingly a huge crack had appeared. "Ah Xian!" Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted and her heart sank as she hugged Dmo Xian's waist tightly. Her fingertips moved and the glower flame fan opened up, sweeping away the billowing flames. "Don't make a move, there's a problem." Diemo Xian's large palm pressed onto Yi Qing Luo's hand, and also suppressed the raging flames on the glower flame fan. What is this? Yi Qing Luo looked at the huge crack behind her. The entire tomb, under this black qi, looked even more sinister and eerie. Diemo Xian's expression was cold. His frozen peach blossom eyes stared at the palace lord of secluded darkness palace as his thin lips pursed slightly. I'm fine. However, from his tone and expression, it was clear that it didn't seem like he was fine. This was the first time Yi Qing Luo met with a high-ranked profound grade like Diemo Xian in a battlefield. Other than being able to sense the surrounding atmosphere, there was something strange. She was totally unable to sense where the danger was coming from like in the past. Diemo Xian had apparently guessed that the palace lord of secluded darkness palace had set up a trap here. He didn't say. It meant that this trap, to him, was a little tricky. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips as she clutched Diemo Xian's sleeve tightly. At this moment, she hated herself. Her improvement was still too slow. She kept saying that she wanted to walk side by side with Diemo Xian. But after such a long time, she was still unable to get close to Diemo Xian's height. All along, it was Diemo Xian who stood in front of her unconditionally, protecting her, helping her to sweep away everything. But now, she couldn't even help Diemo Xian with a little bit of help. There was a high possibility that she was a burden. Even though Diemo Xian's attention was focused on the palace lord of secluded darkness palace. But the young lady's depressed mood was still clearly felt by him, and he could clearly see through the young lady's thoughts. He lowered his eyes and caressed the young lady's head as he spoke warmly. You're already great and you're not a burden. As long as you're by my side, that's enough. His warm words of love were like a hot spring, soaking into Yi Qing Luo's heart. Her eyelashes fluttered, and her arms tightened around him. You're still talking about love when you're at death's door. I'd like to see how deep your love is. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace's sharp voice seemed to contain a trace of anger. As soon as he finished speaking, under the black robe a hand was raised. His hands were long and slender, and they were very beautiful. It was obvious that it was the hand of a young man. A whirlpool of black airflow started to revolve round after round from his palm, heading straight towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo instantly felt a huge suction force, sucking her body towards the direction of that whirlpool. Little Luo Diemo Xian immediately hugged her slender waist tightly. But just at this moment, that huge crack behind him suddenly stretched out a few arms which were formed from the black qi and tightly wrapped around Diemo Xian. That twisting strength seemed as though it wanted to embed itself deeply into Diemo Xian's flesh. Whereas Yi Qing Luo's body was still being sucked towards the direction of the palace lord of Seclusion Palace. The man's strength around her waist became tighter and tighter. Yi Qing Luo felt that her waist was going to be chopped off directly. Chapter 3350. Yi Qing Luo felt the hand on her waist stiffen. Following that, she heard that sinister laughter continuing. This palace doesn't know how to have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. Such a beautiful little beauty, if she were to be split into two. I wonder if she can still maintain her beauty. Yi Qing Luo understood the meaning in his words as she endured that tearing suction force and stretched out both hands with difficulty, grabbing tightly onto Diemo Xian's arm. Ah Xian, don't listen. The hand on her waist slowly loosened. Yi Qing Luo frantically tried to grab his arm. But Diemo Xian avoided it. Ah Xian. Losing the support of Diemo Xian's energy, Yi Qing Luo's body speedily flew towards the palace lord of Seclusion Palace. A dong sound was heard. Her petite body crashed into the arms of the palace lord of Seclusion Palace. She didn't have time to struggle. The palace lord of Seclusion Palace had already locked her body tightly. Yi Qing Luo couldn't struggle as she immediately raised her head and looked at Diemo Xian. She met with Diemo Xian's deep peach blossom eyes. Those black qi arms which were wrapped around him had almost entered his body. and it was continuously pulling him towards the direction of the crack. This scene made Yi Qing Luo's pupils dilate as an unknown emotion started to surge in her heart. Wait for me. She only had time to see the man's thin lips moving slightly as he spat out 2 silent words. Following that, she saw his figure completely being sucked into the crack. The entire graveyard fell into silence. However, that man who had been protecting her, but was afraid of hurting her, had already disappeared in front of her eyes. Ah Xian! She stretched out her hand towards Dmo Xian's direction as her eyes were blood-red. But in the end, she could only watch as he disappeared without a trace. Seclusion Palace. Yi Qing Luo's blood-red pupils were like a demonic datura flower blooming, flashing a strange, treacherous look. She was locked in the arms of the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace. With a backhand, she grabbed the Palace Lord's collar tightly. A pair of blood-red eyes stared deadly at him. Where did you send Ah Xian to? What do you want to do to Ah Xian? Aren't you scheming against us? Why don't you send me over too? The palace master of the gloomy palace, who was being grabbed by the collar, was calm. The hand that was on her waist was still not letting go. He just looked at her quietly and quietly. He didn't answer Yi Qing Luo's question. No matter how Yi Qing Luo howled hysterically, he didn't seem to hear anything. Only uses under that black cloak, cannot see the eye, stares at her. After Yi Qing Luo vented her frustrations, he didn't get a response. Gradually, he calmed down. Only then did she realize that she was very close to the palace master of the Netherworld Palace. She was so close that she could smell the cold air of the palace master of Secluded Darkness Palace. The eyes under the black cloak gave her goosebumps. Those who didn't know better might think that the palace master of Secluded Darkness Palace was secretly in love with her. He wanted to take advantage of her and admire her beauty. For some reason, at this moment, Yi Qing Luo seemed to have seen a trace of familiarity from the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace. However, she couldn't remember when she had interacted with the palace head of the Secluded Darkness Palace. Miss Yi. The palace master of Gloomy Palace, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly called her name. Yi Qing Luo's expression turned cold as she loosened her grip on his collar. What motive do you have? If your target is me and Ah Xian, then wouldn't it be better to send me over to Ah Xian? Heh heh heh. Chapter 33:51. Who said my target is you and the Overlord? The minute the Palace Lord said that, Yi Qing Luo's expression turned cold. Her brows creased as her eyes were filled with doubt. The Palace Lord suddenly increased the strength in his arms, pulling the young lady's petite body closer into his arms. Looks like Miss Yi is unable to guess my intention. In this way, you are destined to stay by my side. The unfamiliar male breath made Yi Qing Luo's expression turned extremely ugly. She struggled to break free from the Palace Lord's restraint. Her face was filled with disgust. Don't say it as though you have some improper thoughts towards me. Aren't you afraid of losing your Palace Lord's face by saying it so ambiguously? The Palace Lord didn't continue to hug her, allowing her to break free. After hearing the disgusting words from the young lady, the pair of eyes under the black cloak started to show traces of chilliness. However, the corners of his lips curled upwards. Then, word by word, she clearly spat out a sentence. What if I really am? What was it? Did he have improper thoughts towards her? Pui pui. Yi Qing Luo was the first to spit on his face. This cold joke, it's not funny at all. Yi Qing Luo rubbed her arms as she distanced herself from him. Don't say that your Palace Lord is against me, chasing after me time after time, scheming and scheming, it's all to attract my attention. Palace Lord, you're after all a high-leveled cultivator from the upper realm, isn't it a little inappropriate to tease a married woman like this? Yi Qing Luo's obvious disgusted action made the Palace Lord's pupils shrink slightly. The hands under the black robe, clenched into fists, tightened a little. A married woman! He gave a low laugh disdainfully. You and him don't seem to be married. Sooner or later. Yi Qing Luo replied decisively, So, where on earth did you send Ah Xian to? The palace master of the Netherworld Palace lowered her head. The slender figure shrouded in the black cloak revealed a sense of loneliness and desolation. Yiqing Luo didn't know why, from him, she could see this kind of emotion. But this had nothing to do with her. She and the palace lord were originally enemies. The path they chose was different. The final outcome was bound to be a battle to the death. Suddenly, the palace master of the Netherworld Palace stumbled on the spot. He raised his hand under the black robe and pressed it against his head. Yiqing Luo creased her brows as she stared at his actions. However, he was secretly speculating in his heart. What kind of tricks was he playing now? In just a few breaths, the palace master of the Netherworld Palace's hand on his head slowly fell down. When he raised his head again, he looked at her. The aura on his body clearly revealed a bit of coldness. He was no longer flirting with her just now. Swish, there was a slight noise. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace suddenly approached. Against the backdrop of the graveyard, his entire body was shrouded in black gas, like a sharp blade baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, tearing open its bloody mouth. His black robe fluttered in the wind. The eyes under the cloak seemed to be dipped in poison, piercingly cold and bone-piercing. In the blink of an eye, his hand was already around her neck. The force was so great that it imprisoned her, making it difficult for her to breathe. This palace's target, right from the start, was only you. His sinister voice sounded a little misty beside her ear. The biting cold intent dispersed in the air. Circles and punches of profound waves imprisoned Yiqing Luo's four limbs. Chapter 33:52. The secluded palace's target was her. She had always been very clear about this point. She had always been unable to understand why someone from the upper realm, risking the danger of being detected by the heavenly way, ran to the lower realm to build a secluded palace. And then time and time again targeted her. What was the reason for it? To the people from the upper realm, no matter how powerful her innate talent and ability was, she was merely a cultivator from the lower realm. Why was it worth the palace lord of the secluded palace to spend so much effort to deal with her? Miss Yi, you don't have to worry. What I need is your body. As long as you listen to me, I can guarantee that your life will not be in any danger. The palace lord of the secluded palace inched closer to her as he smiled lightly. The strength in his fingers gradually tightened along with his smile. Yiqing Luo's face turned pale and gradually turned green. But she didn't stretch out her hand to pry the hand on her neck away. Nor did she struggle or beg for mercy. A pair of icy cold eyes, suffused with a seductive shade of blood, stared deadly at him. Tisk, looks like Miss Yi has already realized that I cannot kill you. The palace lord of the secluded palace released his fingers after meeting her gaze for several breaths. Yiqing Luo took a step back. Circles of red light appeared on her jade-white neck. She raised her hand and placed it on her neck. A pair of blood-colored eyes stared vigilantly at the palace lord of the secluded palace. Indeed, she could feel it, although the palace lord of the secluded palace didn't show any mercy. It was indeed a stance to strangle her to death. But Yiqing Luo knew. The palace lord of the secluded palace would absolutely not let her die like this. Just like what he said earlier. What the palace lord of the secluded palace wanted was this body of hers. This sentence, Yiqing Luo didn't think that there was any other deeper meaning. But it was a serious meaning. The palace lord of the secluded palace wanted this body of hers to achieve a certain goal. Thinking carefully, it seemed that the palace lord of the secluded palace had repeatedly targeted her, was indeed to control her, to make her listen to them. Not only the palace lord of the secluded palace. Even the dark forces in the past were the same. Suddenly, Yiqing Luo seemed to have thought of something as her eyelashes fluttered. She abruptly raised her head and looked closely at the palace lord of secluded darkness palace. You all want my profound heart jade. After she finished speaking, the light in her eyes suddenly brightened again. No, that's not right. It's not only the profound heart jade, there are also other things. Everything that had happened in the past replayed in his mind like a slow-motion movie. Previously, the Dark King of the Dark Forces tried every possible way to snatch away the profound heart jade in my body. After that, the Dark Forces were taken away by your secluded Darkness Palace. You must have already known that my profound heart jade isn't simple. What you want is my profound heart jade, and this vessel that can hold the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. You even joined forces with Godless Island. Previously, you sent Wu San Sha to snatch the profound Phoenix ring. I'm afraid your goal is the same as the Dark Organization's. That's why the remnants of the Dark Organization are willing to be your lackeys. That's right, their goal was the same. It was all for the so-called tomb of the Divine Emperor. It was all for the so-called Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. To find the tomb of the Divine Emperor, awaken the Emperor of the Divine Emperor, and obtain the Divine Phoenix's inheritance. This was the original motive of the Dark Forces. The motive of the Palace Lord of the Secluded Darkness should be the same. Chapter 33:53. The Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace listened to her quietly. Indistinctly, his eyes under the cloak were tinged with a smiling intent. In fact, he was indeed smiling. His smile was light and filled with ridicule. Miss Yi is indeed, as the rumors say, intelligent beyond others. The underlying meaning was that everything that Yi Qing Luo said. Indeed, it was true. But, unfortunately, it's too late to guess it now. I have no intention to let you leave. The Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace's laughter was filled with deep meaning. Come, continue speaking. I really want to know how much you have guessed. Yi Qing Luo's eyes sunk slightly. From the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace's reaction. She had guessed those things. That was about right. Her expression was calm. In actual fact, her inner heart was in turmoil. The little hand which was pressing on her chest unconsciously curled up. She looked at the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace and slightly raised her head as she pursed her lips. There's actually no problem with this heart-calming pearl in my body. And indeed, it's for my own good, right? Feng Ling thought that this heart-calming pearl was intentionally tampered with by the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace to harm her. But in actual fact, the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace had intentionally made use of Feng Ling to pass the heart-calming pearl into her hands. No matter if it was Ghost Doctor or DMO Xian, they were unable to detect any ill intentions from the heart-calming pearl. Because there was no problem with the heart-calming pearl itself. The reason was, her body was the vessel which contained the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. If she was swallowed by the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade, in this world there was probably no other vessel which could contain the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. In case anything happened to the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade, that was why the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace intentionally made Feng Ling send the heart-calming pearl to her side. It was to stabilize the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. But there seems to be one point: you and the Dark Forces are different. Yi Qing Luo spoke again. The Dark Forces want my profound heart jade to locate the vast Water God relic and open the God Emperor's tomb. But your Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace wants my profound heart jade, it seems, not only to open the God Emperor's tomb? The Palace Master of the Secluded Palace smiled. Then, what do you think I'm doing this for? This represented that Yi Qing Luo's deduction was correct once again. Yi Qing Luo's eyes sunk a few more degrees. You want to obtain the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade, borrow this body of mine, and seize the profound heart jade at the most appropriate and suitable time. Ha! Ha ha ha! The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace couldn't help but laugh out loud. He laughed heartily. Indeed smart. Ha ha ha, what you said is correct. The Palace Master of Dark Shadow Palace admitted very decisively, but you guessed one thing wrong. What Dark Shadow Palace wants is not only your profound heart, Jade, they also want you as a person. Yiqing Luo's eyes were half narrowed, but she didn't open her mouth to ask further, quietly waiting for him to continue. Sure enough, the palace master of the secluded palace didn't keep him in suspense. He smiled and said, "Do you really think you're just a lowly mortal from a lowly world? To be able to possess the divine phoenix profound heart, Jade, that even the three realms of heaven, earth, and divine want to obtain, is he really just an ordinary person? No. Yiqing Luo, you are not ordinary. Not only is he extraordinary, but he is also a genius that even the people of the upper realm are jealous of." Chapter 33:54. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. Deep in her blood-colored eyes, there was a ripple of light. But her expression was still calm and indifferent. Slowly, she squinted her long and narrow eyes, her pink lips curled into a faint smile. "I also feel that my identity is extraordinary. From the moment she found out that she wasn't Yi family's seventh miss, Yi Tianquang's biological daughter, she knew that her background wasn't ordinary. After all, how could an ordinary person's body bear the divine phoenix profound heart jade which many cultivators coveted? Plus, the profound flame Dubhe map which her mother left behind before she died. That map was mysterious and complicated. Even when Dmo Xian came to the upper realm, one of his goals was the profound flame Dubhe map. That showed how mysterious the Dubhe map was. And that time when the Baiming clan died to save Yi Fengru, the one which was left behind had something about her biological father. That box. A box which hid a powerful force. She didn't even dare to open the box. It was enough to show that her parents were extraordinary. She was the daughter of extraordinary parents. How could she be ordinary? But she didn't expect that the secluded palace not only wanted her divine phoenix profound heart jade, but also wanted to corrode her body, to turn her body into a puppet. The glint in Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed brightly. She crossed her arms and looked at the palace lord of secluded palace calmly. "Looks like you seem to know my identity. Why don't you tell me? How arrogant is my identity?" The palace lord of secluded palace thought that after he said that, Yiqing Luo would be shocked, would resist, and would go crazy. After all, no one was willing to become a puppet which would be used by others in the future. But he didn't expect Yiqing Luo's reaction to be so calm. So calm that she didn't believe that he had the ability to make her his puppet. Listening to Yiqing Luo's casual question, the eyes of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace darkened. There was a hint of mysteriousness in his tone. "So what if I know your identity? Don't tell me you think you still have a chance to go to the upper realm and restore your identity?" Yiqing Luo smiled. "To put it bluntly, you don't know anything about my identity." The palace lord of secluded palace choked and his body stiffened, not saying a word. Yiqing Luo smiled again. There was a hint of malice in her eyes. She narrowed her eyes and looked at him with interest. Word by word, she said something that shocked him again. "Palace Master of the Dark Abyss Palace. No, more accurately, I should call you the Palace Master of the Dark Abyss Palace on the surface." The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace shuddered. What do you mean? You're not the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace." Yiqing Luo's smile remained unchanged as her tone was firm. "No, I can't say that you're not, I can only say you're just the palace mistress that was pushed out on the surface, and there's someone else behind the scenes." The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace was silent for a long while before she said, "I have concealed it very well. How did you see through it?" His voice was still a little hoarse. Yiqing Luo smiled, imposing manner and the feeling between words. "Do you think that I'm not strong enough to be the Palace Master of the secluded palace?" He laughed in anger. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. "You're very strong and imposing. But you're not the real Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace." Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. Since his imposing manner was very strong, then which part had gone wrong? He had forgotten to tell his babies that Master Mo had taken part in a QQ reading activity. From tomorrow onwards, which was on the 4/1, he needed his babies to leave a message in the book comments section and interact with Master Mo. Master Mo would reply to all of them. Master Mo's post in the book comments section, hoping for your likes and replies, and for the QQ reading activity. Great God said. Master Mo would adjust it to 10 book currency per question. The mission requirement was to raise a total of 20. Great God said that his babies could come forward to ask questions. Chapter 33:55. You are the palace master of the Palace of Darkness, but the person who truly wants me is definitely not you. Yiqing Luo continued to smile. I've crossed hands with the Palace of Darkness for such a long time, so I'm considered to have some understanding towards them. If you hadn't answered my previous speculations, I probably wouldn't have thought in this direction. Because the person who truly wants this body of mine, the person who wants the divine phoenix profound heart jade, will not answer my questions, nor will he tell me more. Because that person knew very well that if he said too much, it would make me suspicious. Once I became suspicious, your goal and plan would very likely fail. She chuckled, and a chill spread from the depths of her charming eyes. I don't think that you went through so much trouble to separate Xian from me just to discuss things about me with me. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace was silent for a long time. The eyes under the black cloak were also filled with ice. He smiled as well. As expected of Miss Yi. No wonder the dark forces were defeated by you. The elite troops of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows couldn't do anything to you. He slowly stepped forward. He walked towards Yiqing Luo. The Yin Qi in the graveyard was chilling. As he walked, the black gas shrouding his body floated. It made him seem even more treacherous and terrifying. Yiqing Luo did not hide. Until he walked in front of her. Yiqing Luo then slowly raised her head and met his gaze. His face was calm, and his eyes were as calm as still water. He stretched out his hand, wanting to touch Yiqing Luo's face. The girl, who had been standing still all this time, turned her head slightly. You can talk, but don't touch me. I'm a married woman. She did not know which of her words had struck him. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace's fingers suddenly exerted force and forcibly grabbed her chin. Under the cloak, one could vaguely feel his ruthless gaze. Yiqing Luo, I admit that you're very smart, but you've probably forgotten that even if there's someone behind me, I am indeed the mistress of secluded Darkness Palace. He closed in, through the cloak. His breath splashed onto Yiqing Luo's face. The unfamiliar male scent made Yiqing Luo's slender brows crease tightly. She took a step back in discomfort. Her chin was tightly gripped by his hand. In the end, you still belong to me. His hoarse and shrill voice carried a hint of madness. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly trembled. Why did these words sound a little weird? Could the palace master of the secluded Darkness Palace really be interested in her? She raised her hand, trying to pry his hand away. However, he suddenly withdrew his hand, and even his body took a few steps back. He pulled a distance away from Yiqing Luo. That hand which was originally pinching Yiqing Luo's chin was pressed tightly on her head. What I mean is that you belong to me as my vessel. His voice was somewhat breathless, as if he was suppressing something. She looked at his state. Yiqing Luo smiled bluntly. She raised her lips and smiled wickedly. Looks like you're just being controlled by others. Once his actions went beyond what a palace master of the secluded Darkness Palace should do. The real mastermind behind the scenes. The forbidden curse on him would be able to restrain his actions in time. Chapter 33:56. The palace master of Netherworld Palace. Although she couldn't see his expression, but Yiqing Luo sensed his gaze from him. All of them revealed the same message. Are you a little stupid? Was there such a person who would steal someone else's corner so openly? How much confidence did she have that she could pry him away? Yiqing Luo smiled. She didn't really want the Palace Master of Secluded Darkness Palace to betray them. He knew so much about the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. Her identity was the Palace Master of the Dark Palace on the surface. How could he bear to leave the Palace of Darkness? Moreover, she had no way of knowing the relationship between the Palace Master of Darkness Palace on the surface and the person behind Darkness Palace. They did not expect him to betray them at all. His words were just a test. He wanted to test if the real mastermind was here. However, from the performance of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace, that person, he shouldn't be here. Although the person in front of him wasn't the real Palace Master of the Secluded Darkness Palace. However, his strength was also above hers. He should be someone from the upper realm. She might not even be able to handle him, not to mention the person behind the scenes. He knew that the real mastermind was not here. Yiqing Luo could rest assured and find a breakthrough point for him to get DMO Xian back. Or send her to DMO Xian. Yiqing Luo believed that with DMO Xian's strength, he would not be trapped. But it was obvious that the other party had purposely set a trap for DMO Xian. She would still worry and be afraid. At least, she had to be safe and sound until DMO Xian returned. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath, trying her best to make her expression look calm and indifferent. However, before she could open her mouth again, intending to get more information about the Dark Nether Palace from him, suddenly, he felt a cold breeze on his cheek. Yiqing Luo seemed to have a reflex reaction as she evaded the attack and the palm wind fell downward. "Bitch! I want you dead!" How Nanren's hysterical roar came into her ears. At the moment when Yiqing Luo's palm wind descended, he didn't evade at all. Instead, he faced Yiqing Luo's palm wind and pressed forward. How Nanren's profound grade was sealed by Yiqing Luo's pills. All that was left was brute force. At some point in time, a dagger had appeared in his hand. Facing Yiqing Luo's palm wind, the dagger in his hand stabbed fiercely towards Yiqing Luo's body. Yiqing Luo retaliated out of reflex. With how much Hao Nanren cherished his life, he would definitely avoid it. She had never expected that Hao Nanren would disregard everything and try to kill her. The palm hit Hao Nanren's chest, but the dagger in his hand also stabbed towards Yiqing Luo's body. Yiqing Luo had not expected this. When the dagger fell, it was also too late to dodge. Damn it! Suddenly, he heard a low reprimand. She felt her body lighten. She was pulled back a little. The pain that he had imagined did not fall. After Yiqing Luo steadied herself, she raised her eyes to take a look. Immediately, he was stunned on the spot. In front of her was the Palace Master of the Dark Abyss Palace, who was dressed in a black robe and whose face couldn't be seen. His hand was gripping the dagger with his bare hand. The sharp edge of the blade cut his palm. Blood oozed out, and that Hao Nanren, who was about 200 over kilograms, was also sent flying. "You!" Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as her thoughts ran wild. The words that were in her mouth couldn't come out. What on earth was going on? Had this world become a fantasy? Why? Would the Palace Master of the Dark Abyss Palace block this dagger for her with his bare hand? Master Mo is taking part in the QQ Readings April Book Comments section activity. I hope that the babies are able to actively participate and help Master Mo and 7th Miss to fight for a ranking. The activity content was as follows. These were the tasks that the activity had assigned and must be completed by Master Mo in the QQ Reading app. 1. Master Mo will post a book comments post in the book comments section, hoping that the babies will actively like and reply to, hoping that the babies will actively leave a comment in the book comments section and interact with. Master Mo will reply one by one and will add more details according to the content. 3. For the latest chapter, I hope that the babies will leave a comment. Every comment and comment will also be counted as a ranking of points for QQ Readings. Great God said, Master Mo will adjust to 10 book coins per question. After Master Mo answers, I hope that the babies will leave a comment under the Great God's comment and interact with Master Mo. Master Mo likes to research on pseudo-sounds and is not a professional pseudo-student. You can try to answer the baby's questions with a mature sister's voice, Lolita's voice, and young girl's voice. The babies can casually tease Master Mo. Master Mo had always said that the continuation of a book was not only due to Master Mo's efforts alone. Along the way, the baby's support and love were indispensable in this activity, not to mention the top 10 or top 3. As long as we are not at the bottom, we will not let down your support and love for 7th Miss, and will not let you down. That is enough. No matter what the result is, this is a glory that belongs to all of us. Chapter 33:57. After the shock and astonishment, Yiqing Luo reflexively congealed her expression as she looked at the palace lord alertly and asked coldly, "What tricks are you trying to play now?" "Heh." The palace lord scoffed as he slowly raised his head and looked at his hand, which was filled with blood. Following that, he casually threw the dagger onto the ground. The dagger, which was stained with blood, made a clang sound as it landed on the ground, which was littered with bones. He shook his bleeding hand as he gave a mocking smile. "This palace saved you, and your words are really hurtful." "Saved?" Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as her expression turned increasingly vigilant. "Are you trying to play the trick of injuring yourself? Trying to use this to move me so that I will listen to your arrangements?" The palace master of Netherworld Palace suddenly stopped talking. Even his swaying hand froze. Not sure if it was an illusion. Yiqing Luo somehow felt that there was a deathly stillness coming from him. Which sentence was it that had stabbed him this time? Yiqing Luo felt that this man was really hard to get along with. Why did she feel that every sentence he said could step on his minefield? Yiqing Luo felt very tired. Suddenly, the palace lord raised his head as though he sensed something as he raised his hand towards Yiqing Luo's arm. Yiqing Luo instinctively evaded. "What are you trying to do? You?" His hoarse voice just spat out a word. Just at this moment, a few loud bang 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 sounds were heard as the entire graveyard was suddenly bombarded. The ground shook as a small crack appeared. Yiqing Luo's body couldn't stop shaking. It was at this instant that he grabbed her wrist tightly. Yiqing Luo didn't manage to shake it off in time. Her body suddenly tightened. The palace lord pulled her along as he sprinted madly towards another direction. His other hand, which was still dripping blood, hung by the side of his body. Blood flowed as it dripped onto the ground. "What are you going to do?" Yiqing Luo hadn't figured out where did that explosion sound came from as she was pulled along by him as they ran with all their might. She panted lightly as she spat out 3 words. She could feel a strong, vast, and majestic dark force eroding the entire graveyard. It made her feel a suffocating feeling. What was this energy? What was going on? Damn it! Too late. He could vaguely hear the hoarse voice of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace reprimanding him. Then, halted by his sudden movement, she bumped into his broad, hard back. Her entire face was smashed into his back. Yiqing Luo didn't have the chance to rebuke, because she covered her mouth and nose, and the moment she raised her head, they saw a figure dressed in a black robe, the same as the palace master of the Dark Palace, standing before them. Looking at the figure, it should be the physique of a man. His black robe fluttered even though there was no wind. His robe fluttered wildly, like a sharp blade baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, as if wanting to devour everything. That majestic and powerful aura. It was released from this person's body. Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly. Who was this person? It actually had such a powerful aura. Furthermore, this person's strength was definitely on par with the palace master of Gloomy Palace. She could not sense the aura of the palace master of the Nether Palace. That was because the palace master of Gloomy Palace had purposely concealed his aura. However, the person in front of him was different. That unbridled and arrogant arrogance. Majestic and powerful, boundless and boundless. It was just this pressure. It was enough to oppress her until she was almost out of breath. Chapter 33:58. The palace lord's figure stiffened as he bellowed in a deep and cold voice. The Overlord has already followed the original plan and entered the dark array. How did I spoil it? That man's head moved. Yiqing Luo could feel that the gaze which was shot over from that man was as cold as a knife. That man asked, "Where do you want to bring her to?" The palace lord's aura turned gloomier and gloomier as his voice became even tighter. "I naturally want to bring her back to the Palace of Darkness." His words paused as he seemed to be impatient as he frowned. "Since when is it your turn to tell me what to do? If I don't come, do you think that you can still keep your life?" That man scoffed coldly as his tone had no respect towards the palace lord at all. Yiqing Luo could tell. Although the palace master of the Netherworld Palace kept on saying, "This palace master of the Netherworld Palace," didn't say anything. But in actual fact, towards that man, he was obviously on his guard and apprehensive. Since he was the palace lord of the palace on the surface. In the Palace of Darkness, other than the real mastermind, who else did he need to be wary of? But it was very obvious. The man in front of him was definitely not the mastermind. After hearing that man's words, the palace lord's body tensed up even more. That hand which was dripping with blood was clenched tightly. When Yiqing Luo saw that, the uneasiness in her heart grew even more. If it was this palace lord, she would be able to feel slightly more at ease. Because she could feel it. This palace lord didn't have any special evil intentions. But the man in front of her was different. The aura around his body was purposely released towards her. Furthermore, it was filled with malicious intent. Even though she couldn't see his face, she could also feel his bone-piercing gaze. "Your mission has ended, I'll handle the rest." That man opened his mouth once again as his voice was as cold as ice. The figure which was blocking in front of Yiqing Luo stiffened once again but didn't leave. "This is my mission. It should be completed by me. Just based on you, when will you be able to bring this woman back?" That man was filled with disdain. "Anyway, as long as she's left with one breath, it's not important how I bring her back." As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of chilling aura charged towards Yiqing Luo's direction in a domineering and overbearing manner. It was an irresistible pressure. This caused Yiqing Luo's expression to change unpredictably. At the bottom of his heart, a wave of shock surged up. This person, he really wanted to kill. Yiqing Luo swiftly raised her glower flame fan, and her footwork was about to display her intention to retreat from behind the palace lord of secluded Darkness Palace. However, the force gripping her wrist tightened its grip on her. She couldn't escape at all. Damn it! There was no way to avoid this powerful dark force. He could only take it head-on. However, the man who was holding her arm suddenly waved his sleeve. Majestic, profound waves spread out in all directions. It collided with that person's ferocious attack. The man growled, "I don't need you. This is my prey." Bang, 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 the two forces collided in the air. Profound waves vibrated. Severed limbs and dried bones flew everywhere in the graveyard. The three of them stood steadily in the midst of this chi wave. No, to put it more accurately, Yiqing Luo was forcefully pulled by the palace lord of secluded Darkness Palace so that she wouldn't be sent flying after the collision of the two forces. But her internal organs weren't feeling well. Chapter 33:59. The palace lord straightened his back as his voice turned cold. "Are you trying to fight with me?" That man sneered. "I'm saving you." "I don't need it." The palace lord replied decisively. "I know very well what I'm doing." "I think you don't know what you're doing." That man's vision seemed to have swept past the palace lord's hand which was cut by the dagger. Looking at that hand which was filled with fresh blood, and the blood was dripping down. That man's smile turned even colder. "Either I do it, or you bring her back to the palace lord." The palace lord seemed as though he wanted to rebuke something, but he lowered his eyes and took a look at his own hand which was dripping blood. He hung his head down. His tensed-up body slowly turned around, facing Yi Qing Luo. He looked at Yi Qing Luo's face as his voice turned chilly. Go. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased tightly as she took a step back. Her brows were filled with alertness towards him. Although, as compared to that man who suddenly appeared earlier, this palace lord of the palace lord seemed to be helping her. But who knew if this was a trick played by the palace lord? One white face and one black face. Then he deceived her just like that, to willingly fall into the pit. Seeing the distrust in Yi Qing Luo's eyes, the palace lord's mood sunk once again. He suddenly raised his hand and locked her wrist. Pulling her, he took big steps towards that man's direction. Yi Qing Luo's expression changed. Let go. Before Dmo Xian returned, she couldn't possibly leave with him. The strength of his fingers increased. If you leave with me now, you'll suffer less. I won't leave with you. Yi Qing Luo's other hand climbed onto his fingers as she forcefully pried his hand away. Palace lord of the palace lord of the palace, this kind of action of yours, not to mention your companions, will misunderstand you. Even I feel that you're secretly in love with me. The palace lord's hand was violently flung away. He stared at Yi Qing Luo. He didn't say a word for a long time. That low pressure made Yi Qing Luo's heart trembled. Did she say anything wrong? It was obviously him, playing the role of the good cop for no reason. It was hard not to be misunderstood. All right. A gust of cold wind brushed past his face. She saw that person stand between her and the palace master of the secluded darkness palace. He was getting closer and closer. Yi Qing Luo could clearly feel the chilly murderous intent from that person. She frowned in alarm, her expression tense. That man didn't hesitate as he abruptly raised his hand, and his profound energy exploded as his palm wind surged and struck towards Yi Qing Luo. It was extremely fast. Even the palace master of the Netherworld Palace didn't have time to react. Why are you dilly-dallying? I can't stand it anymore. How much time do you want to waste? Just cripple him and bring him back to complete the mission. The credit is yours. That person shouted impatiently. His hand movements became increasingly swift and fierce. The surging energy in the air caused people to be shocked. That person's attack was simply too unexpected. Yi Qing Luo, who had sensed the dangerous aura, almost reflexively displayed her footwork. Under the palm wind, a red dress flashed past like the setting sun. Rumble! The deafening cracking sound caused the entire graveyard to collapse. You actually dodged it. That person was slightly shocked and then laughed. Indeed interesting. Ghost King, the palace master of the Netherworld Palace, shouted sternly. You've interfered with this palace's mission time and time again. This palace has the right to punish you for the crime of insubordination. The black-robed man who was addressed as Ghost King paused slightly. In his laughter there was a faint hint of a smile. April Fool's Small Theater. Overlord upholds the rule of the husband. Yi Qing Luo, smiling and waving Xian, come over Dmo Xian, hugging. We've only left for a short while and Lil Luo already misses me? Yi Qing Luo, pushing him, stop fooling around. I have a very serious matter to tell you. Dmo Xian, evil smile. All right, Lil Luo, you say it. Yi Qing Luo, staring at him solemnly, listen carefully. What I want to say is, I don't like you. Dmo Xian, staring at her. Oh. Yi Qing Luo, clutching his lapel. Hey, do you understand what I'm saying? What kind of attitude is this? Dmo Xian, raising his eyebrows. I understand. Yi Qing Luo, don't you have anything to say? Dmo Xian, smiling. What do you mean? Yi Qing Luo, exasperated. I said I don't like you anymore. I don't want to be with you anymore. Shouldn't you be begging me, coaxing me and pampering me so that I'll change my mind? Dmo Xian, continuing to smile. Oh, no need. Yi Qing Luo, unhappy again. Turning to leave, Dmo Xian, hooking her waist. Lil Luo. Yi Qing Luo, turning her head away from him. Don't touch me. I'm very angry now, the kind that can't even be coaxed by kissing, hugging and raising me up high. Dmo Xian, hugging her tightly, sighing. I know what day it is over there. Yiqing Luo, dazed. How did you know? Dmo Xian. Previously, when I went to the 21st century, I wanted to understand you and specially inquired about the customs over there. Yiqing Luo, dazed. You're an ancient person. Is it really good not to follow my routine? Dmo Xian. April Fool's Day, everything said is ironic, so. Lil Luo said she doesn't like me. Actually, she likes me very much, right? Yiqing Luo, turning her head to leave. I didn't say anything again. Goodbye. Dmo Xian, locking her waist tightly, lifting her chin. Lil Luo, although I know you're saying ironic, but hearing Lil Luo's mouth saying such hurtful words, my heart still feels very uncomfortable. Yiqing Luo, looking at the man's approaching face, resisting to no avail. You, what do you want to do? Chapter 3360. But Ghost King didn't respond to the Palace Lord. His figure flashed as he passed by the Palace Lord and pounced towards Yiqing Luo again. His entire body was filled with a murderous aura. The chilly aura enveloped Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's pupils dilated. Her long eyelashes trembled uncontrollably. This chilly aura. It made her limbs numb and unable to move at all. Even if she wanted to avoid it, she was suppressed by his aura. This man. What level was the profound grade? He was so powerful. She was about to step into the legendary stage, a sage profound grade, but she couldn't even withstand his aura. Ghost King. The Palace Master of Netherworld Palace roared, his tone filled with rage. Since Palace Lord wants to punish, then punish. But, in order for the mission to proceed smoothly, I will take over and bring this prey back. Ghost King's tone was very calm, totally disregarding his anger. And with a wave of his sleeves, he took out a rope and tied up the Palace Master of the secluded palace. The Palace Lord was so angry that he cursed. But the more he struggled, the rope that was tied on his body was wrapped even tighter. Just as Ghost King's attention was placed on the Palace Lord, Yiqing Luo was following Old Man Tsang's instructions, slowly circulating the profound qi in her profound jade heart, slowly releasing it to resist the invisible pressure. Like a warm current of profound qi, it spread out in her body bit by bit, and lingered around her limbs and bones. That suffocating feeling in her chest finally felt much more comfortable. Ghost King's reaction was very sharp. Yiqing Luo's aura fluctuated slightly. He had already speedily fixed his vision on Yiqing Luo. Even the cloak couldn't hide the chill in his eyes. You can still resist my pressure? Ghost King's tone was filled with interest. I really can't underestimate you. While they were talking, Yiqing Luo only felt a chilly wind blowing by her cheek. A stinging pain eroded from her shoulder. Ghost King unknowingly stood in front of her again. One hand pinched her shoulder. 5 fingers exerted force and Yiqing Luo could clearly hear a crack sound coming from her body. Yiqing Luo gave a muffled groan. The intense pain caused cold sweat to seep out of her forehead. Her dislocated shoulder caused her to be unable to move her right hand. This restricted her from using the glowing flame fan with her right hand. Yiqing Luo's breathing congealed as she endured the intense pain on her shoulder. She lifted her left hand and flipped her palm to hit the arm that was lying across her shoulder. That palm strike was ruthless. The Ghost King's hand instinctively retreated. Yiqing Luo immediately retreated, avoiding the Ghost King's attack range. Shortly after, he quickly grabbed the glowing flame fan with his left hand. Profound qi gathered, and with a flick of his fingers, the glowing flame fan was like a raging flame, blossoming with raging flames. Bang! There was an explosion in the air. The powerful and vast profound energy surged violently. The Ghost King was also pushed back 2 steps by that palm strike. He raised his hand and looked at the arm that had been hit. His entire body was filled with coldness. The black yin qi in the surroundings was constantly twisting and swirling. His figure looked hazy and blurry. This person called Ghost King was not easy to deal with. No, to put it more accurately, She couldn't deal with him at all. If it wasn't for Old Man Tsong's timely guidance on how to retract his profound energy and escape from that person's demonic claws, there was a possibility that her entire right hand would have been broken by the Ghost King. The disparity between their abilities was just too huge if this carried on. Chapter 3361. No way. Ah Xian had yet to walk out of that so-called dark formation. She absolutely could not let the Nether Palace have their way. At least, she had to drag it out until Ah Xian returned. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers tightened. Half-squinted long and narrow eyes, suffused with a biting cold glint. The profound energy mobilized in the profound jade heart quickly filled her entire body. Then, she abruptly raised her right hand that was powerless to move. 5 fingers opened. Profound chi shot out. The strong airwave was like a huge wave washing the sand, surging violently. It set off layers of huge waves in the air. Her right hand's finger, a ball of cold and beautiful red light, enveloped it. The azure dew ring was burning hot on her fingertip. Yiqing Luo's aura fluctuated and continuously rose. A pair of incomparably beautiful eyes, blood-red bit by bit, covered her entire pupils. Demonic, shocking people. This is... Ghost King stared at Yiqing Luo's right hand. His tone had some meaning. You actually have the Azure Dew Divine Weapon? He seemed to have a strong interest. His eyes stared deadly at Yiqing Luo. You can also use the Azure Dew Divine Weapon. No wonder so many people want to get their hands on you. When Yiqing Luo released the Azure Dew Divine Weapon's power, she could also clearly observe the surrounding situation. After hearing Ghost King's words, Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. This Ghost King was from the Nether Palace. Didn't he know that she had the Azure Dew Divine Weapon? Wouldn't he know her profound jade heart could unlock the Azure Dew Divine Weapon's seal? Originally, the dark forces, for her profound jade heart, to unlock the Azure Dew Ring's seal. It could be said that they had racked their brains. The Nether Palace couldn't possibly not know this. Or, this Ghost King was actually not from the Nether Palace? Lass, although we can confirm that there's nothing wrong with the Tranquility Pearl, with your current body quality, it is enough to extend the fusion time between the Divine Weapon and the profound Jade Heart, but you have to be clear the other party's strength is at a height that you can't estimate. Old Man Tsong worriedly warned, don't force yourself too much, otherwise with your current profound rank, if you suffer the backlash of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade, not only will you be in trouble, this East Tide continent, even the entire Nirvana realm, will become your burial goods. After all, Yiqing Luo had already advanced to Sky Profound 9th grade and was about to step into the legendary stage. How long the Azure Water Divine Artifact's power could be maintained, or how many times it could be used in succession, all of these numbers had to be calculated anew. If it exceeded a certain limit, even with the heart-calming bead suppressing the restlessness of the profound heart jade, Xiao Chen was not able to control it. He was afraid that something might happen to them. Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched tightly. Her blood-colored bewitching eyes were filled with killing intent. I understand. He paused. Her figure suddenly darted and appeared beside the Ghost King. He moved his left hand. The gourd flame fan unfurled and slashed out sharp wind blades. This sudden movement. When the Ghost King realized this, he tried to dodge. Yiqing Luo's figure had already entangled him like a shadow. Bang! That gourd flame fan, which was like a blossoming flame, directly entered the Ghost King's body through his back. The Ghost King gave a muffled groan and turned his hand to grab Yiqing Luo's injured right hand. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes turned cold and her footsteps swayed. Not only did she avoid the Ghost King's counterattack, she also raised her leg and gathered profound energy towards the Ghost King's abdomen and gave a fierce kick. Dong! The Ghost King's body flew out in a straight line. The ground shook and a huge pit exploded as gravel flew everywhere. Hiss! Amidst the billowing smoke and dust, a low and hoarse sound of sucking in cold air was heard. Chapter 3362. No wonder it's the power of a divine relic. That hoarse voice could be vaguely heard again. Smoke and dust rolled. Ghost King's figure was faintly discernible. It gradually became clear. His robe was slightly messy and there were a few pieces of cloth hanging on it. It seemed that Yi Qing Luo's counterattack. It didn't cause no harm to Ghost King at all. Yes. Before you die, to be able to taste the power of a divine relic, it's not a waste for you to come to the lower realm, you should thank me. Yi Qing Luo's pale lips curved slightly. An evil smile bloomed on the corners of her lips. Between his brows there was a captivating, oppressive cold smile on his face. Her words fell. Yi Qing Luo's fingers clenched again. The red light on the azure dew ring bloomed even more dazzling. Majestic, profound light, piercingly sharp. The momentum was majestic, like the surging waves. No matter how one looked at it, it was soul-stirring. But, if someone looked closely, it could be seen. That young lady who released this powerful force. Cold sweat kept seeping out from her forehead, drop by drop, dripping down, soaking her robe. That beautiful face that could topple cities was extremely pale. Her brows were knitted tightly, her eyes were sharp, as if it was bearing great pain. But the young lady's movements were smooth, without any pause. The momentum released. It was completely different from what it showed on the surface. Bam! Another loud crash resounded. Ghost King's attack collided with Yi Qing Luo's attack. Both of them retreated a few steps back. A violent hurricane howled, rolling up the Ghost King's cloak. Yi Qing Luo didn't give Ghost King a chance to catch his breath. Her left hand clenched again. Feeling the burning power of the azure dew ring, she leapt up, the glower flame fan flipped, the profound light burst out. Heh! Young lady, you believe too much in the power of a divine relic. Ghost King sneered. His eyes were filled with malice. Half squinting his malicious eyes, looking at Yi Qing Luo's profound chi boundless attack. He sneered. The moment Yi Qing Luo approached, he raised his hand and grabbed Yi Qing Luo's wrist. Yi Qing Luo felt a sharp pain. She wanted to pull her hand away. But how could the Ghost King give her this chance? Her slender little hand was tightly grasped in Ghost King's palm. The Ghost King laughed coldly. Little girl, I'm afraid you've forgotten that with your current strength, the divine weapon is nothing but a useless object in your hands. His vision turned towards Yi Qing Luo's finger, at that azure aqua ring which was suffused with a red glow. The eyes beneath the cloak revealed a look of greed. A divine artifact for you to use is a waste of a heavenly treasure. Why don't I take over the divine artifact and display its true might? Saying that, Ghost King's finger flashed and turned into a hand knife, chopping towards Yi Qing Luo's wrist. Shockingly, he wanted to chop off Yi Qing Luo's hand directly. F***CK. F***CK. If you want the divine artifact, then say it openly. What was the point of stepping on the high and flattering the low? Damn it! They wanted to snatch her divine artifact. It also depended on whether she agreed or not. Yi Qing Luo's blood-colored eyes flashed a strange red glow. When the Ghost King's hand blade fell, she endured the sharp pain and turned her wrist over. The glower flame fan in her hand turned into a revolving sharp blade, spinning rapidly towards Ghost King's face. Ghost King was caught off guard. He didn't expect Yi Qing Luo to be able to counterattack under such circumstances. When the sharp blade separated the cloak on his face, he then reacted and quickly let go of Yi Qing Luo, dodging backwards. Only, no matter how fast his reaction was, that revolving sharp blade which was like a ball of raging fire was even faster. Chapter 3363. Yi Qing Luo took the opportunity and quickly retreated. She staggered a few steps before stabilizing her body. Then, he panted heavily. Indeed, just like what the Ghost King said. With her current strength, fusing the power of the divine weapon was still too taxing. It was only a dozen rounds of fighting. She already had a feeling that she was unable to do as she wished. Very taxing. Extremely taxing. She forcefully closed her eyes and calmed herself down. Absolutely. She had to hold on. She could not let the Ghost King succeed. At least, she had to wait for Ah Xian to return. Ah Xian, he must be trying his best to return to her side and fighting against the dark formation. So, she had to hold on. She had to wait for Ah Xian. She raised her eyes, her gaze was firm as she looked at the Ghost King. But she saw. The cloak on the Ghost King's face was cut by the glower flame fan. His face was revealed. His facial features were regular. Yiqing Luo, who was used to seeing handsome men, felt that he was handsome. His age was around 40 to 50 years old. The side of his face was slashed by the glowing flame fan, and blood was flowing out of it. Not sure if it was an illusion. When she saw the Ghost King's face, Yiqing Luo actually had a kind of familiar feeling. But after a careful look, she felt that this was a stranger. A stranger she had never seen before. Just now, that fleeting sense of familiarity. What was going on? Young lady. Good, very good. You actually dare to hurt me. The Ghost King's eyes were filled with intense anger. He slowly wiped the blood on his face. His eyes were filled with a treacherous cold glint. Not good. Lass, he is angry. Old man Tsang was shocked. If he is serious, you will be in trouble. He suddenly said firmly, I will come out to help you. No need. Yiqing Luo immediately stopped him. The other party is from the upper realm. If you appear, he will definitely know. The Azure Dew bracelet is on me. No matter what, the secret of the Azure Dew bracelet must be concealed. Otherwise, once those ambitious people knew the whereabouts of the Azure Dew bracelet, they would definitely come to snatch it. After facing the Ghost King, Yiqing Luo was very clear. If those people from the upper realm forcefully snatched the Azure Dew bracelet, she wouldn't be able to block it, but Old Man Tsang was anxious and worried at the same time. Girl, the other party obviously came prepared. The venerable sovereign is trapped in the dark formation. Even a venerable sovereign would need some time to get out of that formation. Plus, we don't know what tricks the dark secluded palace have played in the formation. On top of that, there's obviously a formation set up around this tomb that targets your mental power. It's impossible for you to get those saint beasts to come out and help. When Yiqing Luo heard that, she was stunned. How could that be? Sealed my spiritual power? Then, aren't we still in contact? That's because I've advanced during this period of time, and the connection between us has also increased. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to contact me now. He had to admit it. While Yiqing Luo was using Hao Nanren as bait, Darkness Palace's trap within a trap had to be even more careful. Targeted at Dmo Xian. Targeted at Yiqing Luo. Arrangements had been made. After all, the might of Yiqing Luo's few sacred beasts was simply too huge. If Yiqing Luo were to pull those sacred beasts out for a walk, even if the Palace Lord of Darkness and Ghost King joined hands, they would probably find it strenuous. So, this illusionary tomb was targeted at Yiqing Luo's mental power. When Yiqing Luo stepped into the palace she had seen previously. Chapter 3364. Yiqing Luo tried to sense the pet space. Sure enough, she couldn't contact her companions in the space. She pursed her lips tightly. The light in her blood-red eyes kept darting around. After a while, she fixed her gaze on Ghost King. I can do it. Old Man Tsang, even without Chi-Chi and the rest, it doesn't matter. After all, I'm the only one who can have the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade, and also the one chosen by the Azure Water artifact. After she finished speaking, her slender fingers clenched tightly again. That slightly unstable aura, once again, began to rise. On her fingertip, the Azure Water ring flashed with red light. Because of this, Yiqing Luo didn't notice. On the other side of the Azure Water ring, that red jade Profound Phoenix ring was also faintly emitting a faint light. all of her energy, all concentrated on the artifact. She circulated the power of the profound heart jade and began to explore bit by bit towards her wrist. Last, Old Man Tsang realized Yi Qing Luo's intention and his expression changed greatly. You still want to release the power of the azure water artifact? No. Absolutely not. Old Man Tsang was about to rush out from the azure dew bracelet. Your body can't withstand the power of two artifacts. Even if you have the Tranquility Pearl, the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade will be unstable. Old Man Tsang saw that Yi Qing Luo was still mobilizing her profound energy, and his aura exploded. He was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. Lass, if the Overlord is here, she will absolutely not let you do this. If the Overlord painstakingly comes out from the dark formation, and something happens to you because of the backlash from the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade, what will the Overlord do? Don't worry, Yi Qing Luo slowly closed her eyes, her voice slightly trembling. Since the artifact chose me, then it must be something that belongs to me. If I can't conquer it, even if I contract the artifact, like what Ghost King said, it's just a useless thing. Success was always accompanied by risk. If she didn't try, how would she know that she couldn't control the artifact's power? This was an artifact that belonged to her. It should be conquered by her. The dark force had already entered the thin red line on his wrist. Azure Water Chain. This was the second Azure Water Divine artifact she had obtained from the 21st century plane. He fused the power of the Azure Water Ring and the Azure Water Chain together. It should be enough to deal with the Ghost King. Even if he couldn't kill the Ghost King, at the very least, he could buy some time. You! Old Man Tsang was unable to refute Yi Qing Luo's words. He indeed admired this point of Yi Qing Luo the most. Confident but not conceited. He also had the courage to challenge. Instead of going with the flow. After a while, he sighed. Forget it, I will accompany you. If the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade really suffers a backlash, I will definitely stop it even if I have to use all my soul power. Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly. Then, he focused all his attention on the two divine artifacts. She guided the power of the two divine artifacts to fuse. Sure enough, it was as she had expected. When the power of the two divine artifacts fused together, it was as if it had its own consciousness. They quickly intertwined with each other. The fusion of the two energies was very smooth. But, the main body that received these two powers, only Yi Qing Luo wasn't feeling too good right now. This body of hers, releasing the power of the Azure Water Ring, was already strenuous enough. Adding on the power of the Azure Water Chain, once it fused, she felt the internal organs in her body were burning in pain, as if they were being burned by a raging flame. Chapter 3365. The fusion of the two god relics' energy was still moving about excitedly. The blood-colored glow encircled Yi Qing Luo's surroundings. It enveloped Yi Qing Luo within it, like a blood-colored protective cover. This scene made the infuriated Ghost King squint his sinister eyes. That sinister and ruthless face was a bit pale. Young lady, you really don't want your life anymore? The terrifying profound glow on Yi Qing Luo's body was still increasing. Ghost King's face was gloomy as his palm wind moved and struck towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Bam! Ghost King had no way to get close to Yi Qing Luo. His body was sent flying by a strong impact. It was the blood-colored protective cover which encircled Yi Qing Luo's surroundings. Ghost King fell onto the ground and was forced to slide a few meters back by the impact. His robe was cut by the sharp bones and stones on the ground, and a large piece of flesh was cut off. His brows twitched in pain as he swiftly sat up straight and looked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. How is this possible? How could her profound grade continue to increase? Isn't she afraid that her body can't take such a load? Ghost King frowned in disbelief. The place where he fell was not far from where the Palace Lord of Secluded Palace was tied up. Coincidentally, the Palace Lord of Secluded Palace could hear Ghost King's words clearly. Palace Lord of Secluded Palace was extremely shocked. He looked at Yi Qing Luo's right hand, which was broken by Ghost King as it kept on encircling Yi Qing Luo and seeping into her body. Following that, he looked at Yi Qing Luo's profound energy, as it continued to rise at an extremely terrifying speed. Even in Secluded Palace, using the method which he instructed, no one was able to do it like what Yi Qing Luo was doing now, to keep on rising terrifying power. If this went on, it would really be like what Ghost King said. Yi Qing Luo's body was unable to take the load of this energy. Once she suffered the backlash from the profound Jade Heart, Yi Qing Luo would die. Palace Lord of Secluded Palace struggled anxiously. Palace Lord of Secluded Palace's movement naturally attracted Ghost King's attention. The Ghost King looked at the Palace Master of the Nether Palace with an ugly expression. How many divine weapons does she have? Didn't you set up a trap for this little girl and His Majesty before coming here? How could there be a change? The Palace Lord of Ethereal Palace stared intently at Yi Qing Luo's direction. Hearing the Ghost King's words, the eyes under the black cloak flickered slightly. Unconsciously, his gaze became gentler. Indeed, as long as Yi Qing Luo was around, no matter how meticulous the plan was, there will be changes. Because the girl herself was a variable. Yi Qing Luo didn't know that Ghost King and the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness were astonished by the current situation. There was only one feeling in her heart, damn it. She was dying of pain. After the power of the two divine artifacts fused together, the profound Qi seemed to have been injected with stimulants as it surged continuously in his body. It passed through every tendon and vein. It passed through every inch of flesh. And this dash. It was as if a sharp blade had ruthlessly sliced him. It was like a ball of raging fire, burning furiously. If it wasn't for the fact that her willpower was strong enough, she probably would have fainted from the pain. Chapter 3366. Lass, this is the profound heart Jade's warning to you. Old man Tsang sighed and knew that no matter how he dissuaded her, he would not be able to dispel Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. The more clearly, the more worried old man Tsang was. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's head full of cold sweat from the pain and her forcefully enduring the pain, old man Tsang also felt that he was empathizing with her. If one looked closely, one would probably be able to see that Yi Qing Luo's delicate body was currently trembling slightly. Nothing, she closed her eyes and deeply felt the profound energy in her body. Although her body was in pain, like it was about to swell, like it was about to tear her soul apart. But Yi Qing Luo's heart was not the least bit flustered. She was not trying to be brave, but he felt a strange power. That was the power mixed in with the pain. She did not know how to describe this feeling. There was an inexplicable kind of obsession. As long as she could combine the power of the divine artifact and deeply find that mixed power, it would definitely be of great help to her. This was like touching a barrier when her profound grade was promoted. As long as she broke through that barrier, then she would be able to promote. Her strength could be promoted. This mysterious and unfathomable power, it was a barrier. Break this barrier. She could completely conquer the divine artifact. Not only that, she couldn't use the divine artifact. But, although she had the obsession, in fact, it was not that easy to achieve. At least, the pain in her body had already made her somewhat unable to withstand it. She knitted her thin brows tightly. Her breathing was slightly hurried. She wanted to calm her mind. He tried his best to see that strange power clearly, to explore that barrier. But the more she wanted to explore it, that pain in her body that was like a sharp blade cutting through her bones and a raging flame deepened a bit. Motherf ****. What the hell was this power? Yi Qing Luo tried her best to maintain her consciousness. Suddenly, the two powers of the divine artifact fiercely shook in her body. Yi Qing Luo only felt that something was expanding in her body. She even felt that, His body was like a balloon that was getting bigger and bigger. It grew bigger and bigger. Her heart skipped a beat, and her breathing became even tighter. The feeling of pain. She didn't even hear Old Man Tsang's worry. His forehead was covered with dense cold sweat. Her delicate body trembled even more violently. Just when she felt that her body was about to explode, suddenly, he felt a gentle feeling in his head. It was as if a warm and soft palm was gently caressing her head. Then her eyelashes, which were tightly shut, suddenly trembled. Her delicate body also trembled. Soon after, the heart-wrenching pain and burning sensation in his body were extinguished by this warm and refreshing feeling. What followed closely behind? It was a comfortable, soft, and cool feeling that flowed through her limbs and bones. The power of the fusion of divine weapons, surprisingly, he was also well behaved. Lass. Beside his ear was Old Man Tsang's anxious and panicked shouts. Yiqing Luo was startled by this sound as she opened her eyes. In her mind, Old Man Tsang's joyful voice rang again. Lass, you scared me to death. Luckily you're fine. Yiqing Luo was still in a daze. She moved her body. She discovered that her body seemed to have been reborn. Light like a feather. Even the right shoulder that was broken by Ghost King had recovered its original liveliness. Chapter 3367. Was this the change caused by the fusion of the divine weapon? In other words, she succeeded? The change in Yiqing Luo's body. As a weapon spirit, Old Man Tsang could naturally feel it. After confirming that Yiqing Luo's body wasn't affected by the power of the divine weapon fusion, and instead successfully conquered the power of the divine weapon, he was so ecstatic that he almost jumped out of the azure dew bracelet. Girl, you're amazing. How did you do it? You actually withstood the power of the divine weapon fusion. It's simply incredible. Old Man Tsang had hypothesized many possibilities. He also thought that Yiqing Luo could conquer the power of the divine weapon fusion, but he never thought. Not only did she conquer the power of the divine weapon fusion, because of this power, her body had been reborn. It could be said that Yiqing Luo now was the new her. Her body was even more perfect than before after she used the cleansing marrow pill. Almost no impurities could be found in her body. It could even be said Yiqing Luo was about to leave the mortal body. Hearing Old Man Tsang's shock, Yiqing Luo was slightly startled. She was surprised. Old Man Tsang, just now, when my breath was in a mess and I was almost devoured by the power of the two divine weapons, wasn't it you? Wasn't it you who placed your palm on my head and helped me suppress the power of the divine weapons? Just now at the critical moment. That soft palm on her head, wasn't it Old Man Tsang's? What palm? What suppression? Old Man Tsang was at a loss. Yiqing Luo was startled again, her long eyelashes slightly trembled and immediately lowered her eyes. Not Old Man Tsang. So where did the energy that helped her just now come from? Who was it? Why? Would choose to help her suppress the power of the divine weapon? Let her successfully conquer the divine weapon? Girl, don't worry about the palm or suppression, look over there. Old Man Tsang suddenly reminded. Yiqing Luo recovered from her deep thoughts and looked towards the direction where the profound energy was the most turbulent. A deafening roar sounded, shaking the heavens and earth. Only to see the disheveled Ghost King, both feet firmly planted into the ground, both hands clenched into fists, his entire body tensed up, every line smooth. He roared again and again. The profound energy in his body was also rising at an extremely terrifying speed. His clothes and black hair fluttered in the strong wind as he bared his fangs and brandished his claws. He must have realized what you were thinking and wanted to take the opportunity to cripple you. Old Man Tsang solemnly said, although you've fused with the power of two divine weapons, this power isn't yours after all. I'm unable to estimate how long it will last. So, you must be careful. The opponent's profound rank is not low, and his overall strength is definitely not weak. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips and responded seriously. She looked at the Ghost King warily. Even after fusing with the power of 2 divine artifacts, Old Man Tsang still warned her to be careful of the Ghost King. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the Ghost King's strength was. Facing such an unknown and powerful enemy, she had to be careful. Just at this moment, that man who was howling suddenly shot his vision towards Yiqing Luo. In his eyes, a valiant profound aura shot out 2 gusts of cold wind directly towards Yiqing Luo's face. Xiao! A strong wind cut through the sky. Chapter 3368. But the Yiqing Luo who had been reborn had an extremely acute sense of danger. In the instance when Ghost King's vision looked over, Yiqing Luo reflexively leaped up and turned into a red ray, disappearing into the air. Young lady, I didn't expect you to have 2 divine armaments on you. It's not a waste for me to specially rush over today. Ha ha ha. Ghost King's words had just ended. He had accurately located Yiqing Luo's current position. Yiqing Luo had not even stabilized herself when Ghost King's next attack had already arrived. Yiqing Luo's fingertips moved and the glower flame fan opened up, suddenly releasing a red barrier. Violent and ferocious profound energy crashed onto the barrier. Rumble! 2 bursts of energy suddenly exploded. Violent profound energy blended with the heaven and earth. The surrounding air seemed to have been frozen by an invisible force. The explosive aura made Yiqing Luo's breathing difficult. This Ghost King was indeed not to be underestimated. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased tightly as she speedily evaded Ghost King's attack. Her figure was as swift as lightning. Her movements were as smooth as flowing water. Violent and terrifying profound energy kept spreading outwards. After exchanging over 10 moves with Ghost King, the both of them took a step back. But Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change. But the fishy sweetness in her throat indicated that she wasn't as calm as she looked. This round of exchange, in fact, she was the one at a disadvantage. What was the background of this Ghost King? His ability had actually reached such a level? Even the power of 2 divine armaments combined couldn't even contend against him. If she didn't take the risk earlier, wouldn't she be carried by Ghost King directly to secluded palace now? Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched tightly, feeling the surrounding heaven and earth's profound energy twining around her. After the transformation of her body, after her ability had increased, her body's transformation was indeed huge. Now she could even feel the presence of the Palace Lord of Secluded Palace who was tied to one side. One must know that before this, even if the Palace Lord of Secluded Palace stood in front of her, she wouldn't be able to sense his presence. But now she could sense it. This meant that the Palace Lord's ability and now her ability after fusing with the divine armaments were on par. And now she was probably no match for the Ghost King. That was to say, Ghost King was more powerful than the Palace Master of Gloomy Palace. Who exactly was this Ghost King? He didn't look like he was from the Dark Nether Palace. However, he had been helping the Palace of Netherworld. Could it be, was he also an outsider like Zhu Wuxin, who worked with the Palace of Darkness? The power of a divine artifact is indeed extraordinary. Even a mortal like you can grow to this extent, the Ghost King laughed coldly. His face was filled with a satisfied grin. He slowly raised his hands and laughed a little crazily. Divine artifact. I must get it. Ha ha. This is my divine artifact. When he raised his hand, it brought along a violent and ferocious profound energy. Endless waves of chi began to surge. The dark and gloomy sky also seemed to have turned into a ball of mist, and started to gather towards the center of his palm bit by bit. That terrifying aura. It was as if it could destroy heaven and earth. Ghost King, you can't do that. Seeing this, the Palace Master of Gloomy Palace struggled anxiously. The ropes that bound him cut his skin and blood seeped out. Chapter 3369. Ghost King's sinister laughter didn't stop because of the Palace Lord's words. The horrifying aura was still circling around. His eyes were filled with sinister viciousness. She has the protection of the god relic, she won't die. Anyway, what you want is the profound jade heart in her body. Saying that, he licked his lips greedily as his voice became increasingly sinister. If I want to get the god relic, the only way is to destroy her willpower and mental power. Of course, the most convenient way was to kill Yi Qing Luo. But secluded palace didn't allow it. Then, he could only destroy Yi Qing Luo's willpower and mental power. Then he could cut off the connection between the god relic and Yi Qing Luo. Ghost King narrowed his sinister eyes as his vast profound energy slowly moved towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. After testing the power of the god relic, I am very satisfied with it. Enough talking to yourself. Looking at the Ghost King's powerful and boundless profound chi, which was charging towards him like a hot knife through butter, the Ghost King's eyes widened. Yi Qing Luo's eyes suddenly turned cold. The glower flame fan moved. A fire dragon was formed, brandishing its claws as it circled in midair. Her brows were cold, her eyes were flowing with a burning battle intent. The fire dragon roared towards the sky. Following Yi Qing Luo's control, it went against the vast profound energy released by Ghost King. Not good. Old Man Tsung's voice rang. The Azure Dew bracelet followed closely. Lass. He's serious now. You can't go head-on. Old Man Tsung attempted to break the Azure Dew bracelet and come out to help Yi Qing Luo. Just as the fire dragon was roaring upwards, Yi Qing Luo felt something was wrong. Because Ghost King's arrogance. It was totally different from when they exchanged blows previously. If at that time she could still exchange over 10 moves with Ghost King. But now, she was basically going to be killed in a second. Thinking of Ghost King's words earlier, Yi Qing Luo's heart trembled. Could it be? Ghost King was actually testing the god relic's evil power on her, to see how much impact it could have on her? Now the test was over. He was going to use his full strength? Yi Qing Luo had no chance to hesitate. Ghost King's vast and boundless profound energy directly severed the fire dragon which Yi Qing Luo had released. Yi Qing Luo's eyes turned cold as she displayed her footwork. The glowing flame fan in his hand spun rapidly. Red light lingered and silver threads shot out. The silver threads swiftly wound around Yi Qing Luo and formed a silver-edged shield. Red profound light enveloped it. Yi Qing Luo's finger hooked again. The silver-edged shield smashed into the Ghost King's attack. It was this momentary pause. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes as her footsteps moved swiftly. Teleportation's secret technique. That's right, at this moment, Yi Qing Luo was displaying her teleportation secret method. This was because her previous footwork relied on her dark force to move. The Ghost King could rely on her aura to determine where she would land. But teleportation's secret techniques were different. He moved silently. Even the Ghost King could not detect the fluctuation of her aura. It was too risky to use the teleportation technique. But other than that, in a short period of time, there was no better way. But she had intentionally used the glowing flame fan's 1,000-year silver threads to create the silver-edged shield which should have completely attracted the Ghost King's attention. He should not have noticed that she had displayed the teleportation secret method. Indeed, Ghost King's attention earlier was indeed attracted by that silver-edged shield. But Yi Qing Luo seemed to have forgotten. In this cemetery, other than the Ghost King. Chapter 3370. The young lady instantly disappeared before his eyes. There wasn't any young lady's presence in the air. This made the Palace Lord's eyes widen as his eyes were filled with shock and astonishment. What kind of footwork was this? Why couldn't he sense any fluctuation in her presence? The Palace Lord looked at Ghost King again. He saw Ghost King looking around, as though he was searching for Yi Qing Luo's whereabouts. His heart trembled fiercely for a few times. If Yi Qing Luo's ability was above him and Ghost King, she disappeared. They couldn't sense her presence at all. Perhaps this could be explained. But it was impossible that even Ghost King couldn't find Yi Qing Luo's whereabouts. The eyes of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace flashed. Could it be? Was this another escaping skill which Yi Qing Luo intentionally hid? There were always various kinds of miracles on that young lady. So, this was another miracle which she created? But this illusionary tomb was specially created to deal with Dmo Xian and Yi Qing Luo. How could it possibly give Yi Qing Luo a chance to escape? Even if this was her miracle. And ultimately, she was unable to walk out of the illusionary tomb. As expected, Ghost King disappeared silently in front of Yi Qing Luo. In this half an incense's time, he wasn't able to find Yi Qing Luo's presence. His eyes turned sharp. Immediately he raised both his palms. His thick palms floated a layer of black smoke, twisting aura. He opened his palms, as though he was in midair, parting a layer of air. Immediately after, the entire graveyard started to shake violently. The graveyard cracked open like a spider web, densely packed and spreading out. The ground was filled with broken limbs as they started to fall. The cracked ground looked like a bottomless abyss. Not long later, Ghost King's vision suddenly fixed on a certain direction. Following that, his figure swayed as he dashed towards that direction. Rumble. The surroundings were still filled with deafening explosions. That direction was the most secluded corner of the tomb. It was at least 200 meters away from the battlefield earlier, and the instance when Ghost King dashed over. In the darkness, a blazing red shadow with a boundless profound light dashed out like a bolt of lightning. The surging airwaves were like raging waves, constantly surging. It's really here. The Spirit King snorted coldly, facing the incoming profound light. The strength chi in his body shook. The air waves rolled and dispersed the dark force that was coming at them. Boom! The woman who was charging forward was shaken by this wave of energy, causing her blood and chi to surge. Her delicate body suddenly flew back a few steps. When the red figure steadied himself, he took a closer look. Wasn't it Yi Qing Luo? Ghost King's malicious eyes were burning as he stared at Yi Qing Luo. That piercing gaze made one tremble in fear. In particular, there was a sinister smile on his face. Little girl, you actually know teleportation? Ghost King was getting more and more interested in Yi Qing Luo. A person from the lower realm. Not only did he possess two of the vast water divine artifact, his mortal body could withstand the power of a divine artifact. He actually knew the teleportation secret technique. Teleportation secret technique, how nostalgic. He didn't expect that 10,000 years had passed. He actually saw the teleportation secret technique once again in the lower realm. Who taught you the teleportation secret technique? He stared at her. The smile in his eyes was even more horrifying. Yi Qing Luo's body was still a little stuffy from the earlier airwave. Chapter 3371. Damn it. She thought that she could make use of this opportunity to leave this illusory territory. After all, she was in the trap zone set by the secluded palace. She had been suppressed too badly. If she left the tomb, she could at least summon her little companions to fight together. But she had not expected that she couldn't find the exit at all. Or perhaps there was no exit at all. After that, she was discovered by Ghost King, and was seen through by Ghost King in one look. The footwork she displayed was the blink movement secret art. That familiar reminiscing tone. Apparently, Ghost King had seen the blink movement secret art before. Even if she wanted to deny it, Ghost King probably wouldn't believe her. Blink movement secret art. The ultimate secret art used by the King of Thieves that year. Ghost King slowly walked towards Yi Qing Luo. Every step seemed to condense an invisible pressure. Yi Qing Luo pressed her chest. Earlier her chest was still in a state of relief from Ghost King's pressure. She saw him walking towards her again. That invisible pressure made her feel even more uncomfortable. That fishy sweetness in her throat seemed as though it was about to gush out. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly as her slender fingers clenched tightly. The hand holding the feather fan also tightened. She was on high alert as she slowly retreated. Young lady, as long as you tell me, where did you learn this blink movement secret art from? I will let you leave this place, how about that? Ghost King suddenly stopped when he was 5 steps away from Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo looked at him coldly, listening to his words which sounded like a discussion. She couldn't help but burst out laughing. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old kid? What right do you have to make me believe your words? Ghost King's expression remained unchanged as he continued, Young lady, you should be very clear that you have no capital to negotiate with me. Other than choosing to believe me, you have no other choice. Yiqing Luo laughed angrily. Why should I choose to believe you? Why should I choose to leave? My man has been placed into the darkness array by the palace lord of the secluded palace, and I will not leave until my man comes out. Ghost King, who was the one who used the blink movement secret art to escape from the tomb, saying in such a serious manner that she didn't want to leave. Did her skin need to be so thick? Yiqing Luo expressed that she was the one who wanted to leave, and this was different from asking him to let her leave. Didn't she want her face? Did she have to leave just because he asked her to? Moreover, she didn't believe him. It was that simple. The Ghost King said, Little girl, I am giving you a chance. Do you think that if I wanted to investigate, I wouldn't be able to find out your secrets? Yiqing Luo replied, Oh, then go ahead and investigate. Ghost King. This girl, why didn't she play by the rules? Soft ones wouldn't work. The Ghost King decided to use force. His face darkened as he strode forward. He stood right in front of Yiqing Luo. The hand which was condensed with profound energy went straight to Yiqing Luo's neck. Speak! Who on earth did you learn your teleportation technique from? Where is that person? But just as Ghost King's hand touched the skin of Yiqing Luo's neck, he exerted his strength. His palm was actually holding a handful of air. Where was the girl's figure? The Ghost King's face darkened. Damn it! It was the teleportation secret art again. Yiqing Luo, who had executed the teleportation secret art, was already far behind the palace lord of the secluded palace. Squatting down, the glower flame fan in her hand flipped and a dagger was hidden in the fan handle, pressing against the palace lord of the secluded palace's neck. The palace lord of the secluded palace who was unable to move. Damn it! Chapter 3372. Yiqing Luo expressed that anyway her blink movement secret art had already been seen through. In this place, there wouldn't be a fourth person appearing. Then just use it casually. She could also use it to train her blink movement secret art which she hadn't used for a long time. She pressed against the palace lord's neck and lifted him up. I'll borrow you for a while. Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace. Use it, what if he accidentally died? Yiqing Luo replied, Oh, don't worry about this. You still have some value so I won't let you die. Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace. So she didn't care about him if he had no value? Yiqing Luo replied, Oh, I won't. You've sent my Xian into the darkness array. How could I possibly not care about you? Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace. What was with that sinister tone? Forget it, let's not bother about him. No matter how much Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace was thinking, he was still taken as a hostage by Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo. Ghost King was infuriated. Yiqing Luo displayed her blink movement secret art and instantly disappeared from his sight. She was simply making fun of him. His face was gloomy and his malicious eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo had a hostage in her hands, so she wasn't worried that Ghost King would launch another attack. She stared at Ghost King as she slowly squinted her eyes. Ghost King was so persistent about how she learnt the blink movement secret art. Moreover, he said, The same thing that Ghost Doctor said when he saw her executing the blink movement secret art. King of Thieves' ultimate secret art, blink movement secret art. Ghost Doctor's tone and expression back then was filled with nostalgia. And Ghost King was the same. Moreover, he seemed to have confirmed that she had learnt the blink movement secret art from the King of Thieves. But, from Ghost King's tone, she didn't feel that Ghost King wanted to know the whereabouts of the King of Thieves and then hold a ceremony to acknowledge him. That tone sounded. It was obvious that they looked like enemies. This wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was, she knew the blink movement secret art and it wasn't taught by the King of Thieves. But the Azure Dew Bracelet's Purgatory Tower's first floor reward. Of course, this was something that Yi Qing Luo would never reveal even if she was beaten to death. Let him go. Ghost King stared at the dagger in Yi Qing Luo's hand. His malicious eyes flickered slightly. Yi Qing Luo smiled. You can't. Yi Qing Luo. The Ghost King's gloomy eyes darkened. Let him go and tell me the whereabouts of the person who taught you the secret method of teleportation. Then I'll open the exit of the dark formation and let the venerable sovereign out. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. If the condition was to let her go, she might not be moved. But, the Ghost King said, to let Ah Xian out, even if he deeply believed in Ah Xian's strength. Yi Qing Luo was still worried about him. She thought about how he had set up a dark formation specifically to target her, and how he had fought against the formation in order to rush out to save her. She felt as if there were thin needles piercing her heart one by one. Therefore, the Ghost King's words moved her. Ghost King had been paying attention to Yi Qing Luo's expression. Seeing that her expression had loosened, his lips curled as he increased the temptation. Young lady, this dark formation is a trap specially set up by the secluded palace to target the venerable sovereign. No matter how strong the venerable sovereign is, he would still be injured in the formation. Or perhaps, because of you, he might even lose his life. Chapter 3373. Yi Qing Luo's eyes dimmed. Her long, curly eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings. She raised her eyes and fixed her gaze on Ghost King. The expression on her face was cold and solemn. Her pair of charming eyes were covered with frost, filled with a biting cold intent. Why should I believe you? She finally compromised. The light in the eyes of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace, who was being restrained, dimmed. If possible, he hoped that Yi Qing Luo would not be tempted and use him as a hostage to continue to threaten Ghost King. But Ghost King used Dmo Xian as a bait. He was very clear. If Ghost King used her life as a bargaining chip, Yi Qing Luo would absolutely not be moved. But once it involved Dmo Xian, Yi Qing Luo chose to compromise. Ha! Ha ha! Ghost King laughed. That's the right choice. An unimportant person's whereabouts, in exchange for the safety of you and Dmo Xian, this pair of lovers, it's worth it. He stared at Yi Qing Luo. Hand him over to me. Tell me, where is the person who taught you the blink movement secret art? Yi Qing Luo was indifferent. Open the entrance of the dark array. I want to see Ah Xian safe and sound before I can be assured. Ghost King's face sunk. Young lady, you don't believe me, then why should I believe you? Yi Qing Luo sneered. Don't tell me you're afraid of my Ah Xian? Worried that after Ah Xian comes out, you won't be able to control the both of us? Ghost King's malicious eyes flashed a chilly glint. Young lady, goading me is useless. But don't mix me with that bunch of cowards. I, Ghost King, have never been afraid of anyone since I was born. Saying that, he moved his palms. Rolling profound chi was like a raging wave, rolling in his palms. Soon after, the sky above the entire graveyard was shrouded in pitch-black clouds. The yin chi around the cemetery started to distort. Just like the time when the dark array appeared. Black chi curled and in mid-air, it gradually formed a tiny crack. That crack slowly widened. Yi Qing Luo stared at the crack. Earlier, Ah Xian was sucked in by this crack. Just as a fist-sized hole opened up in the crack, a figure suddenly appeared. A loud shout exploded in his ears. No! Don't let venerable sovereign come out. Otherwise, everything will be for naught. Yiqing Luo's entire heart was placed on the crevice. Suddenly, the explosive roar was right next to his ears. It was so loud that her eardrums were buzzing. At this moment, the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace, whose neck was pressed by Yiqing Luo, surged a powerful black chi in his eyes, as he attacked towards that crevice. The black aura instantly filled up the fist-sized crack. He blinked again. The crack disappeared in midair. The twisting black chi that pervaded the air also gradually dispersed. The Ghost King's movements were interrupted by this sudden power. The backlash caused him to feel a tightness in his chest, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face darkened as he glared at the Palace Master of Gloomy Palace. "What are you doing? The Overlord must die in the Dark Array. If the Overlord comes out, none of us will be able to bring Yiqing Luo back to the Palace of Darkness. Which means that the mission has failed." The Palace Lord of Gloomy Palace panted lightly as he fearlessly drew a wound on his neck with the dagger. "I don't care what relationship you have with that blink movement secret method. But this is a mission. I can't let you destroy everything." When Ghost King heard that, he couldn't help but laugh. "Are you sure you're doing this for the mission, or because of jealousy?" The Palace Lord of Gloomy Palace was stunned. Chapter 3374. The Ghost King sneered. "Palace Master, my cooperation with the Palace of Darkness is only verbal. I will help you only because I owe your master a favor. However, it doesn't mean that you can represent the Palace of Darkness and tell me what to do." The face of the Palace Master of the Secluded Darkness Palace was covered by the black cloak, so his expression could not be seen clearly. But from his emotions I can feel it. At this moment, his heart was in chaos and apprehension. He could not refute the Ghost King. His body was extremely tense. Even the dagger at his neck scratched his skin. It was as if he didn't feel any pain. His eyes were fixed in the direction of the Ghost King. The Ghost King's expression darkened. He raised his hand and wiped away the blood at the corner of his lip. "If you continue to cause trouble, I won't want your life anymore." Yiqing Luo felt the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace stiffen. Is this the rhythm of internal strife? Actually, in Yiqing Luo's heart, because the Palace Lord of the Secluded Darkness Palace had destroyed the entrance of the Dark Array which was opened, she was rather furious. She narrowed her eyes and tightened her grip on his collar. "Did you hear that? If you destroy the entrance to the Dark Array formation, you won't be a qualified hostage anymore." The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. Don't make it sound like he really wanted to be a hostage. Yiqing Luo expressed that being her hostage was better than being tied to the ground. If she was not careful, she might even fall into the deep abyss which was split open by the Ghost King. That bottomless abyss. Falling down was much worse than being a hostage. So, being a hostage or something, at least I can still live for now, right? Palace Lord of Netherworld Palace. He still didn't want Dmo Xian to walk out of the Dark Array. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. She hoped that Dmo Xian had died in the Dark Array which was filled with traps, never to appear in front of Yiqing Luo ever again. Ghost King glanced coldly at the Palace Lord of Gloomy Palace and finally looked at Yiqing Luo. The expression on his face was extremely cold. "Little girl, you'd better tell me where that person is after this, or else I'll make you regret what you've done today." After a pause, he continued, "Even if Di Zun is by your side, I still have the ability to make you regret it." His words fell. He spread his palms open once again, and his majestic dark force covered the entire graveyard. The dark clouds rolled again. The black gas rose again. Yiqing Luo clasped the Palace Lord's hand tightly. A trace of suspicion flashed across her half-closed eyes. What kind of enmity did this Ghost King have with the King of Thieves? He had a feeling. His obsession with the King of Thieves was very deep. They were so deep that they didn't hesitate to go against their cooperation with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. He was so deep that he didn't hesitate to give up the 2 divine artifacts he wanted. But just as the crack reappeared in midair, it slowly widened. The sky above the entire graveyard suddenly flashed with an extremely dazzling golden light. Immediately after, Yiqing Luo's profound jade heart was like a raging inferno as it fiercely burned for a moment. In the pet space, the breaths of a few companions came. He could also vaguely sense an extremely familiar aura rapidly approaching. Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. This was Kitty. It was Kitty's aura. She had signed a life and death blood contract with Kitty. Within a certain distance, they could sense each other's presence. In other words, Kitty was nearby. How did she find her way here? This place was a trap set by the Palace of Darkness. It was the land of illusion. Yiqing Luo was extremely dazed. Chapter 3375. Yiqing Luo didn't know what that flash of golden light was. Ghost King and the Palace Lord of the secluded palace knew. This golden light represented, this illusory land had been broken by someone. Even the suppression on Yiqing Luo's psyche had been broken. Ghost King's brows creased tightly. How could this be possible? How could this be possible? How could there be anyone in this lowly lower realm who could break the illusory land he had created? And because of this shock, it made the cracks in the dark array which were gradually opening up close again. The next moment, the truth which Ghost King couldn't believe appeared in front of his eyes, only to see the boundary of the graveyard. Out of nowhere, a slender black silhouette appeared, directly pouncing towards Yiqing Luo's direction. That petite and slender figure was like a kitten. Yiqing Luo was still holding the dagger which had slipped out from the glower flame fan and holding onto a hostage. Seeing the figure pouncing over, she didn't even hesitate. She directly threw off the hostage and kept the glower flame fan. Opening her arms, she hugged that figure into her arms. "Sister!" A sweet little voice with a kitten's coquettish tone. The girl in Yiqing Luo's arms rubbed her head fiercely in her arms. The 2 black ears on her head popped out. The black tail swayed excitedly. Yiqing Luo hugged the girl in her arms and gently rubbed her little head. Indeed, Kitty was here. But, to be able to break this illusory land and destroy the array which was suppressing her psyche, it shouldn't be done by Kitty Lee. Where there was Kitty Lee, there would be Zoemo. Where there was Zoemo, there would be Ghost Martial Artist. So, Ghost Martial Artist was here? You are. Ghost King looked at this cute girl in astonishment. When his vision was fixed on the ears on Kitty Lee's head, and that tail which was wagging excitedly, his expression changed. Beast human race? How could there be beast humans in Nirvana realm? You're the one who locked Kitty's beloved sister in this damned place and bullied her? Kitty Lee, who heard the voice, suddenly popped out from Yiqing Luo's arms and stared fiercely at Ghost King. His hair stood on end. It even showed its sharp teeth. Ghost King stared at Kitty Lee's teeth, then at Kitty Lee's hands, which had transformed into cat claws. He was extremely shocked. "You're a beast man. How did you come to the lower realm?" "None of your business." Kitty Lee's sensitive nose detected the blood stench on Yiqing Luo, and immediately her pair of quick-witted eyes turned into a whirlpool, deep and serene. Her sweet voice inexplicably revealed a bit of coldness. "How dare you hurt Kitty's sister? Kitty will pay with your life." With that, she suddenly turned to the other side of the graveyard and shouted, "Zoemo! Come out, Kitty!" The Ghost King's expression became increasingly sinister. He felt, barging into the place he had transformed into. It wasn't just a single beast man. There were others. Moreover, there were many of them. The majestic aura was not something that a lower realm like the Nirvana realm could possess. Oh no, the hostage palace mistress of secluded palace heard Kitty Lee's call and her tone turned flustered. "It's them, they're here. Yiqing Luo's helpers are here." "Helpers?" Ghost King frowned. "What helpers? What's going on?" palace mistress of secluded palace didn't answer him. There was no need to answer. Chapter 3376. At the edge of the cemetery, a formless energy was projected over. The golden light flickered. In the haze, a few figures appeared indistinctly. Following that, those few figures got nearer. The one walking at the front was a young man dressed in white. Following closely behind him was the cold-faced Gui Wu. The white-robed young man's speed was extremely fast as he dashed in front of Yi Qing Luo. But that pair of evil phoenix eyes was looking at Kitty Li in Yi Qing Luo's arms as he smiled evilly. "Little wild cat, who bullied you, I will take revenge for you." Kitty Li rolled her eyes at Zhou Mo and stared at Ghost King. "It's that ugly freak who hurt my sister. Overlord brother-in-law is gone too. Help me teach that ugly freak a lesson." Zhou Mo smiled. "If I help you teach that ugly freak a lesson, how does little wild cat intend to reward me?" Kitty Li's eyes widened in an adorable manner before her cheeks flushed red. "You, how can you? Kitty ignore you in front of my sister?" Obviously, this reward was absolutely not an ordinary reward. Moreover, it seemed that this kind of reward happened frequently. Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes as she looked at the blushing Kitty Li in her arms and couldn't help but laugh. Looked like the days when she was not by Kitty Li's side. This pair of lovers was living a life of public display of affection every single day. Zhou Mo was obviously proficient in teasing Kitty Li. Seeing Kitty Li's blushing cheek, his lips curled as he smiled evilly. "Little wild cat, I didn't say what the reward is. Have you thought wrongly? You." Kitty Li flew into a rage out of embarrassment as she squeezed out from Yi Qing Luo's arms and raised her fist as she threw a punch towards Zhou Mo's face. Zhou Mo raised his hand as his large palm held Kitty Li's little hand. Following that, he used a little force. Kitty Li was held in his arms. Kitty Li harumphed hard but didn't struggle. Then, Zhou Mo shot an extremely complacent gaze towards Yi Qing Luo. "Yi Qing Luo. So young Master Mo had treated her as his love rival? Alright. She indeed looked like young Master Mo's love rival. But, both of you, can't you wait till the crisis is over before showing your love?" The current style was obviously not right. Kitty Li also realized that the location wasn't right. When he came back to his senses, he punched Zhou Mo's chest again. "Hurry up and teach that ugly guy who bullied my sister a lesson." However, Zhou Mo didn't let go. His curved phoenix eyes flickered with a profound light. He chuckled. "Don't worry, I don't have to do anything. Someone else will deal with him." Yi Qing Luo's slender brows rose when she heard that. Young Master Mo meant, the Ghost Warrior will deal with the Ghost King? Her line of sight shifted from the two of them to the Ghost Martial Artist. Only then did he realize. The Ghost Martial Artist, who had always been calm and indifferent and could not cause any ripples after eating the ancient martial artists, was now staring at the Ghost King. On that young face, a solemn and dignified expression that didn't match his face appeared. At this moment, the Ghost King's line of sight was fixed on Gui Wu's body. His sinister eyes were dark and treacherous. His expression was solemn, as if he was facing a great enemy. Everyone could see that. These two people, they definitely knew each other. As expected. Just as the two of them stared at each other for about half an instance's time, they heard the two of them calling out at the same time. "Gui Wu! Ghost King!" They called out each other's name. Only their tone was totally different. Chapter 3377. Gui Wu frowned. "Why are you here? You can be in the lower realm, why can't I?" Ghost King asked back. Gui Wu remained silent for a while, his brows knitted even tighter. "You shouldn't be here." Ghost King laughed. "Why? You can be in the lower realm, why can't I be?" His voice paused. He seemed to have thought of something, the hostility in his eyes intensified. "That person, is he with you? Where is he?" Gui Wu stared at his slightly crazed face for a long time. Then, he surveyed his surroundings. Finally it landed on the Palace Lord of Nether Palace. Gui Wu's eyebrows were tightly knitted together, clearly in a displeased mood. You and the Netherworld Palace are involved? I'm asking you, where is that person? Ghost King suddenly roared. The surrounding air also dispersed a burst of intense, profound wave. He leapt up and pounced towards Gui Wu. Master Gui Wu. Yiqing Luo was shocked and was about to rush forward. Ghost King was someone from the upper realm. His strength was unfathomable, so powerful that even she who had fused the power of 2 divine weapons was not able to contend against him. Although Master Gui Wu's strength was also unfathomable. He was also an old acquaintance of Ghost King. But this sudden attack. Yiqing Luo was worried that Ghost King would be sneak attack. Just as she moved, her shoulder was held down by someone. A strong force pulled her back. Yiqing Luo turned her head and saw Zomo, who was hugging Kitty Li, looking at her sloppily. Don't worry, that person is not Awu's opponent. Not Ghost King's opponent. Such a powerful person, actually. Was not Ghost King's opponent? That Ghost King. How powerful was he? But you. Zomo tilted his head and stared at her. Does the Overlord know that you are wasting your body like this? Yiqing Luo knew that he was referring to her, the matter of fusing the power of 2 divine weapons. She pursed her lips. I'm fine. That's because you're lucky, but it doesn't mean that you can be so lucky every time. Zomo no longer looked at her. If you don't know how to take care of your body, you shouldn't have contracted with Kitty Li. Yiqing Luo looked down. When Kitty Li heard this, she got angry and puffed up her cheek. Hey, what are you talking about? It's a contract with Big Sister, it's decided by Kitty. Zomo hugged Kitty Li tightly as he glanced sideways at Yiqing Luo. He was smiling on the surface, but his tone was cold. Do you see that? How important are you to the little wildcat? Not only little wildcat, but many people around you are also worried about you. Before you ruin your body, please think about the people who are worried about you and care about you. Kitty Li's struggling movements paused slightly. Yiqing Luo's drooping head slowly lifted up. She licked her lips, which were a little dry. I know, but I'm not acting on impulse. I want to become stronger, to be able to protect those who worry about me and care about me. You should know that success and risk always coexist, but I believe that I will succeed. Zomo looked at the young girl in front of him. Her clear eyes were filled with determination. A faint light flashed across his deep almond-shaped eyes. He said nothing more, but his gaze returned back to that side, to the 2 people who were entangled. The exchange of blows between experts was really different. Every movement, that was a fatal killing intent. Yiqing Luo looked at the 2 people who were entangled. She could deeply see earlier Ghost King and her. It was totally a small fight. Chapter 3378. But she wasn't immersed in disappointment. She forcefully closed her eyes, and her slender fingers clenched tightly. She silently swore in her heart. She must work hard to make herself stronger. Not only to walk side by side with Xian, to look at the blooming flowers, but also to make the people around her feel assured. Qing Luo! Qing Luo! There were a few excited shouts in his ears. Yiqing Luo looked over. She saw a few figures walking over from the side of the graveyard. A row of 6 people, neat and tidy, dressed in the same series of black and white attire. On their chests there were cherry blossom totems, embroidered with the word, the world. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted. The corners of her lips unknowingly curled into an arc. Xiao Yi Jin Zi, Ah Zhan, everyone, you're all here. Yes. It was the World Mercenary Group's everyone. Yan Xiao Yi and Tong Ziqing ran up and hugged the young lady. We had just rushed over to East Continent and heard from the East Continent monarch that you might have been kidnapped by the people from Secluded Palace. Do you know that we were almost scared to death? Although we know you have the Overlord by your side, but but God Thief said that he sensed a strong energy fluctuation, so we rushed over with Master Gui Wu and the others. God Thief is here too? Yiqing Luo frowned as her vision shot towards the two people who were fighting in the sky. That's right, not only God Thief, even the World Group and various powerhouses from various continents have all rushed over, Yan Shaoyi said. Yiqing Luo's brows rose. One secluded palace had united the 4 continents which had nothing to do with each other for the past 100 years. Amen. This was considered as the only merit that secluded palace had done in Nirvana realm. This time, we not only want to force secluded palace out of Nirvana realm, we also want to report to the upper realm. We don't believe that the people from the upper realm really don't know anything about such a huge matter happening in Nirvana realm. Speaking of this, Yan Shaoyi's tone was obviously filled with anger towards some matters in the upper realm. She more or less understood a little from Qiao Jin. Because of this, she felt extremely disgraceful towards the upper realm's actions of watching without lifting a finger, since they allowed the people of their plane to bully them in the lower realm. He could only watch helplessly as the lower realm fell into destruction. In that case, what right did they have to call them people from a lower plane of existence from a higher plane of existence? What right did they have to call them trash? What right did the people of the upper realm have to be respected by the people of the lower realm? Where's the Overlord? Long Yunzhan, who had been silently staring at Yiqing Luo, suddenly opened his mouth. That pair of azure blue eyes contained an indiscernible complex emotion. Only then did they realize what was going on. That's right, why isn't the Overlord by your side? Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk slightly. He, because of me, was sent by the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace, into the dark array which was specially set up for him, and till now, he still hasn't come out. Everyone's expression changed. Seeing Yiqing Luo's face turning pale, Yan Shaoyi immediately hugged her arm and consoled her. The Overlord is so incredible, he will absolutely be fine. Since it's a formation targeted at the Overlord, it will definitely take him some time to break it. Don't worry, the Overlord is the most powerful person in the world. Yiqing Luo forcefully pulled the corners of her lips as she revealed a faint smile. Chapter 3379. I'm fine. What answered her was the same indifferent tone. Yiqing Luo expressed that she missed it very much. Tong Ziqing pulled Miao Yi over. It's all thanks to Yi that class monitor could be saved. Now that Yi has joined the World Group, we're all a family. Miao Yi smiled. Sister Luo saved me and the Miao Gu clan. This is what I should do. Yiqing Luo rubbed her head as she replied sincerely, no matter what, I really thank you. That's right, Qing Luo, earlier you mentioned Palace Lord of Secluded Palace? Emo Han Shang leaned his head over and pointed to the 2 remnant figures in the sky. That person who is fighting with Master Gui Wu is the Palace Lord of the Secluded Palace? He's actually on par with Master Gui Wu. He is the external helper of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. His strength is indeed very strong. As Yiqing Luo was saying that, she took a look at Zhou Mo's direction. However, Zhou Mo still had no intention of intervening in this battle. Not sure what was going on, Yiqing Luo shook her head. We can't help, let's take a look at Master Gui Wu's condition first. The battlefield in the horizon was getting more and more intense. They exchanged blows. The entire sky above the graveyard was constantly shaking like waves of air, rippling wave after wave. Their speed and attacks were fast and ruthless. Yiqing Luo, who was still fused with the power of the divine weapon, couldn't see clearly the moves between the 2 of them. 2 figures appeared from time to time, and then there were a few loud explosions in the air. Then, the 2 figures disappeared again. The next time he appeared, another series of bangs rang out. He disappeared and reappeared. And so on. There were also many rays of light shooting in all directions. Indeed, no one could intervene in the fight between the 2 of them. However, as the 2 of them fought for a long time, Their attacks became more and more impatient and ferocious. The Xian radiance that shot out in all directions also shot out uncontrollably. Yiqing Luo and the rest stood below, and there were several times when they were almost accidentally injured. He was caught in the middle of a battle between experts. It wasn't just about how they fought. He also had to be careful to avoid the power that they shot out in all directions. Just then, the two people fighting in the sky fiercely collided their palms. Rumble! The two palm winds collided, bringing along a majestic dark force. For a time, the air in the graveyard was filled with a suffocating pressure. Endless profound waves overflowed from the profound energy of the two people fighting. Be careful! Yiqing Luo's expression congealed. As for the overflowing profound qi, there was no problem for her to dodge. However, if Tong Ziqing and the others were hit by this qi, they would definitely die. Even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. She moved her feet and rushed in front of everyone. Shortly after, he swiftly unfurled his glowing flame fan and his profound qi surged, turning into a profound barrier that enveloped the few people behind him. Qing Luo, be careful! While Yiqing Luo was protecting the few people behind her with the barrier. But he had neglected to protect himself. Seeing those overflowing profound qi, splashing onto Yiqing Luo's body, the people inside the barrier all exclaimed, Yiqing Luo! Beside him, the hoarse and panicked voice of the palace master of Netherworld Palace could be heard. Then, she felt another aura rapidly approaching her. However, in the next instant, Yiqing Luo only felt her waist tightening. Her entire petite body was locked tightly in a broad embrace. The elegant sandalwood scent filled her nose. It easily soothed all the restlessness and uneasiness in her heart. Chapter 3380. The long arm around her waist tightened slightly. A powerful energy congealed into a barrier, replacing the barrier which she had created. Yiqing Luo's profound qi dispersed. She raised her head and met with that pair of deep sea-like peach blossom eyes which seemed to gather the stars. That pupils were filled with her reflection. Yiqing Luo's arms circled around his neck. Ah Xian, you're all right. You're all right. Diamo Xian's eyes drooped as he lowered his head and planted a gentle kiss on her forehead. Amen, I'm all right. I'm back, don't worry. Yiqing Luo buried her head in his arms, deeply inhaling the reassuring scent from him. Feeling his warmth. Only then did she ascertain that he was really safe and sound and had returned to her side. And now, she buried her head in Diamo Xian's arms. So she didn't see it. When the man gently caressed her back, she raised her head slightly as she shot a glance outside the barrier, at that man who maintained his outstretched arm and stood stiffly on the original spot, covered in a black robe. Diamo Xian provocatively curled his thin lips as his eyes turned chilly. That gaze seemed to be ridiculing him. Trying to show your presence in front of this lord's woman? You're still too tender. The palace lord naturally didn't miss Diamo Xian's provocative gaze. His tensed-up body became more and more taut as he started to tremble slightly. He was angry and annoyed, but he had nowhere to vent it out. Earlier, he was obviously the one to save Yiqing Luo first, but he was intercepted by Diamo Xian, who appeared out of thin air. Looking at Diamo Xian's provocative gaze, the palace lord's stiffened hand slowly drooped down. On his wrist there was an obvious blood stain which was left behind from struggling against the rope. This scene, Yiqing Luo didn't see it, but the people in the world group who were protected could see it clearly, especially when they saw the provocative gaze which the Overlord shot out. They were all stunned, all right. When had the Overlord become so childish? Yan Xiaoyi was just about to open her mouth to tell Yiqing Luo about this matter. She had just opened her mouth. A cold glint flashed over Yan Xiaoyi, who was swept by the Overlord. How could he dare to open his mouth? Yiqing Luo, who totally didn't know anything, after she calmed down, she hugged Diamo Xian's waist and raised her head to look at him. The Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace said that the dark array was specially set up to deal with you. You should be all right, right? Just as he finished asking this question, Yiqing Luo felt that her waist had turned stiff. Following that, she heard DMO Xian chuckling lightly. It's nothing, that little trick of theirs doesn't matter, I only spent some time to find the exit of the array. Yiqing Luo expressed that his body's reflex reaction wasn't that simple. DMO Xian remained silent. Could he tell Yiqing Luo? In that dark array, all the checkpoints of the array were all transformed into her Yiqing Luo's appearance, and he knew it was fake. But looking at that face, he couldn't bring himself to do it? If his Lil Luo found out, he was afraid that he would not be able to get over this joke. DMO Xian expressed that it was better to keep it a secret. Hence, DMO Xian increased the strength of his arms as he hugged her tightly. He lowered his head and laughed softly beside her ear. I'm able to break the array, it's all thanks to Lil Luo's help, otherwise I might still be trapped inside. My help? Yiqing Luo didn't understand. Chapter 3381. Yiqing Luo understood. It was her deal with the Ghost King. Let the Ghost King open the entrance to the Dark Formation. Although the entrance was destroyed by the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace, however, at the moment when the entrance was opened, it still gave DMO Xian a chance to break the array. In that case, he had to thank the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace for stopping the entrance from opening. At the very least, this was the result. Xian returned to her side safely. Her deal with the Ghost King could not be considered a success, so there was no need for her to discuss the origin of her teleportation technique. Otherwise, he would have to rack his brains to come up with the whereabouts of the King of Thieves. Now, he had saved himself some trouble. How wonderful! Xian, do you know where did that Ghost King come from? Yiqing Luo turned her head away, avoiding DMO Xian's tender kiss, as she changed the topic. DMO Xian smiled. Wait till you reach the upper realm, you will know. Yiqing Luo gave him a stare and snorted. On the surface, he seemed to be throwing a tantrum, but in his heart, he understood. DMO Xian's refusal to say anything was for her own good. In the future, when he grew a little stronger, he would naturally understand. The battle in the Land of Illusion did not last long. Because, according to Yan Xiaoyi and the rest, that was, Secluded Darkness Palace took the opportunity when Yiqing Luo and DMO Xian were trapped in this illusionary land. Taking advantage of the situation, they once again launched an offensive to invade the East Wave continent. The attack this time was obviously different from the previous battle. The Palace of Darkness didn't seem to be affected by the defeat at all. Whether it was in terms of numbers or strength, they were as ferocious as wild beasts. More importantly, over at Gloomy Palace, they could even control demonic beasts to fight for them. But the East Wave continent was different. East Water Continent had just experienced a huge battle, and although they relied on Yiqing Luo and the others to obtain victory, however, they had also sacrificed a lot of profound practitioners, wealth, and resources. You haven't even had time to catch your breath. A great battle was about to break out. How could the East Wave continent compare to those monsters from Netherworld Palace? This sudden attack, adding on to the fact that Yiqing Luo and DMO Xian weren't in the East continent. The East Wave sovereign was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. However, perhaps the East Billow continent was not fated to die. Just as the Netherworld Palace was about to succeed and swallow the entire East continent, when the World Group had rushed over from the West continent, they had also brought along the representatives of the various powerhouses from the other two continents as they charged over valiantly. Only then did he manage to stabilize the situation. Even though the East Wave Monarch really hoped that the group of young heroes in the World Group would be able to protect the East Wave continent. But he still told the World Group about his guess that Yiqing Luo and DMO Xian might have been schemed and kidnapped by the Palace of Darkness. Hence, after confirming Yiqing Luo's position, Yan Xiaoyi and the others went to save Yiqing Luo first. As for the rest, they would stay on the East Wave continent and fight against the Nether Palace. Therefore, the battle between the two experts did not last too long. After the two of them exchanged a palm strike, Ghost King looked at Yiqing Luo as his gaze turned chilly. "I will come back to look for you." Then, he slipped away. Gui Wu did not chase after him. He retracted his profound energy and walked over with a calm expression. He had no intention of explaining the Ghost King. Yiqing Luo's long eyelashes fluttered. Come back for her? Look for her for what? To inquire about the origin of the Blink Movement's secret art? Why was it that Ghost King was so persistent towards the Blink Movement's secret art? Just as she was deep in thoughts, her cheek suddenly hurt.